My wife mocked my dead-end job, until my side business made more than her career ever did. The silence in the conference room was absolute. It was the kind of silence that has weight, pressing down on your shoulders and making the air feel thin. Across the mahogany table, my wife Elena was staring at the sheet of paper my lawyer had just slid toward her. Her face, usually composed in that distinctively sharp, corporate executive way, had gone completely slack. Her mouth was slightly open. Her high-priced shark of a divorce attorney, a man named Sterling who had spent the last hour treating me like a stray dog that had wandered into a country club, was leaning in to read the numbers. I saw Sterling's eyes widen. He adjusted his glasses. He looked at the paper. Then he looked at me. Then he looked at the paper again. "Is this accurate?" Sterling asked, his voice losing the condescending purr he had been using on me since we sat down. "It is fully audited," my lawyer Sarah said calmly. "We have provided the last 3 years of tax returns, bank statements, and business incorporation documents to verify the income streams." Elena looked up from the paper. Her eyes met mine. For the first time in 5 years, she wasn't looking at me with pity or irritation. She was looking at me with pure, unadulterated shock. "But..." Elena started, her voice cracking. "But you manage a warehouse. You make $45,000 a year. I see the pay stubs. I see the deposit into our joint account every 2 weeks." "That is my salary from the warehouse, yes," I said, keeping my voice level. "I never lied about that. That is what the warehouse pays me." "Then where did this come from?" She slammed her hand down on the paper, her composure shattering. "This says you cleared 7 figures last year, Mark. 7 figures. You drive a 2014 Honda Civic. You wear clothes from Target. Where is this money?" I leaned back in my chair. "It is in a trust. And high-yield savings. And a diversified portfolio. I live off my warehouse paycheck because I like the simplicity. And because, frankly, you made it very clear that my contributions to this household were irrelevant compared to your career." This was the moment. This was the exact second I had fantasized about during every dinner party where she cut me off, every night she rolled her eyes at my tiredness, and every time she introduced me to her colleagues with that apologetic little laugh. Let me back up. You need to understand how we got here to understand why seeing her face crumble was the most satisfying moment of my life. The dynamic. Elena and I met in college. Back then, things were equal. We were both broke students fueled by cheap coffee and ambition. But even then, the trajectories were different. Elena was pure Type A intensity. She was studying corporate law, interning at top firms, and networking before she even had a degree. I was studying logistics and supply chain management. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't glamorous. But I liked systems. I liked efficiency. By the time we were 30, the gap had widened into a canyon. Elena was a junior partner at a prestigious firm in the city. She was making excellent money, dressing in designer suits, and driving a luxury SUV. I was the floor manager for a municipal distribution center. To Elena, my job was a joke. In her world, success was defined by job titles, the view from your office window, and the ability to expense a $300 lunch. In my world, success was making sure the city's infrastructure didn't collapse because someone forgot to order hydraulic fluid. I worked long hours. It was physical work. I came home tired, sometimes smelling like diesel or cardboard. I made $45,000 a year. To be fair, the benefits were incredible, and the pension was rock solid. But you can't wear a pension to a cocktail party. Elena never missed a chance to remind me of the disparity. It started small. We would be deciding on a vacation, and I would suggest a road trip or camping. She would laugh. "Mark, honey, we are going to Cabo. Don't worry about the cost. I'll pay for it. I know things are tight for you." It sounds generous, right? But it was the tone. It was the pat on the head. It was the way she emphasized, "I'll pay for it," like she was treating her teenage son rather than her husband. Over the years, the resentment calcified. She took over all the financial decisions. She bought the house she wanted, in the neighborhood she wanted, because her name was the one carrying the mortgage. I was just the passenger. I paid my share of the utilities and groceries, which took up a chunk of my warehouse check, but to her, my contribution was cute. Like a child handing over a handful of pennies to help pay for a new car. The mockery. The worst parts were the social events. Elena loved hosting. She loved surrounding herself with other lawyers, doctors, and tech executives. I was the prop. I remember one Christmas party vividly. It was 2 years ago. The house was full of people drinking expensive wine and complaining about their bonuses. I was in the kitchen, organizing the recycling because the caterers had made a mess of the bins. I walked into the living room to grab a glass of water, and I heard Elena holding court by the fireplace. She was talking to a new associate at her firm, a guy named Greg who wore a watch that cost more than my car. "So what does Mark do?" Greg asked, looking around. "I haven't had a chance to chat with him much." Elena laughed. It was that specific tinkling laugh she used when she wanted to be charmingly self-deprecating. "Oh, Mark? He works at a warehouse down by the docks. He moves boxes. Or tells people to move boxes. Honestly, I lose track. It keeps him busy, and it gives him a reason to wear flannel." The group chuckled. "Hey, honest work," Greg said, though his tone suggested he was talking about a golden retriever learning a new trick. "It is," Elena agreed, sipping her wine. "It is adorable, really. He comes home so exhausted, acting like he has run a marathon. I just let him have his nap. It is not like he has to worry about billing hours or client retention. He just stacks things. It must be nice to have a life that simple. No stress, no ambition, just boxes." I stood in the doorway, gripping my glass of water so hard I thought it might shatter. Adorable. Simple. Just boxes. I walked back into the kitchen, poured the water down the sink, and went to the garage. That was where I spent most of my time anyway. The secret. Here is the thing Elena never bothered to ask about. She never asked what I actually did at the warehouse. She assumed I was a glorified janitor. The truth was, I was a logistics expert. I understood flow. I understood how to move physical goods from point A to point B with zero friction. And 4 years ago, I noticed a massive inefficiency in the way small to medium manufacturing companies handled their surplus inventory. They were losing millions annually because they didn't have the software to track waste. I have a background in coding. It was a hobby I picked up in college and never dropped. I didn't play video games in the garage. I wasn't just tinkering with old radios. I was building a proprietary algorithmic platform. I called it FlowState. It started as a simple script I used at my own job to make my life easier. It worked so well that I saved the municipality $200,000 in the first quarter. But instead of giving the software to the city, I realized I could license it. I spent my nights and weekends building the back end. I incorporated an LLC under a nondescript name. I hired a freelance sales rep on commission to pitch it to mid-sized logistics firms in the Midwest. The first year, I made $20,000. I put it right back into the business. The second year, the software caught the attention of a regional shipping conglomerate. They didn't want to license it. They wanted to integrate it into their entire supply chain. That contract was worth $300,000. I didn't tell Elena. Why? Because the week I signed that contract, she had a meltdown because I bought generic brand paper towels. She screamed at me for 15 minutes about how we could afford better and how I needed to stop acting like a poverty-stricken student. She told me my scarcity mindset was embarrassing. If I told her I had made $300 grand, she would have spent it. She would have upgraded the house, upgraded the cars, and upgraded our lifestyle to match her frantic need for status. And worse, she would have taken credit for it. She would have told everyone she encouraged me to monetize my little hobby. So I kept my mouth shut. I kept my warehouse job because it gave me health insurance and, crucially, it gave me access to real-time data to test my updates. I was the beta tester for my own product. By year 3, FlowState had gone viral in the logistics world. It was lean, it was effective, and it was cheaper than the bloated enterprise software the big tech companies were selling. I had 50 clients. I had to hire a customer support team, which I managed remotely during my lunch breaks. Last year, the year Elena decided our marriage was stagnant, my net profit after taxes and expenses was $1.2 million. And Elena didn't have a clue. The escalation. The dynamic at home shifted from condescension to hostility about 6 months ago. Elena didn't get a promotion she felt she deserved. She was stressed, angry, and taking it out on the easiest target available, me. She started picking fights about my schedule. I need you to take Thursday off, she told me one morning while putting on her earrings. We are hosting a dinner for the partners. I need the house prepped and the catering managed. I can't take Thursday off, Elena, I said. We have a massive shipment coming in. I have to be on the floor. She spun around, her eyes blazing. A shipment? Mark, are you kidding me? It is a warehouse. If you aren't there, the boxes will still get moved. This dinner is crucial for my career. If I make partner, that is another $100,000 a year for us. Your little job pays peanuts. Do the math. My career takes precedence. My job pays the bills too, I said quietly. Your job pays for the groceries and the internet, she scoffed. My job pays for the mortgage, the cars, the vacations, and your retirement. Do not pretend we are partners in this, Mark. I am the CEO of this family. You are the support staff. Act like it. That was the line. You are the support staff. I took Thursday off. But I didn't prep the house. I hired a cleaning crew and a coordinator to do it. I paid them in cash. When Elena came home and found everything perfect, she didn't thank me. She just nodded. See, she said. Was that so hard? You just have to prioritize what actually matters. I realized then that she didn't want a husband. She wanted a wife. She wanted someone to manage the domestic sphere so she could conquer the world, but she also wanted to mock that person for not being a conqueror. The breaking point. The end came 2 months ago. I had just closed a licensing deal with a national auto parts distributor. It was the biggest deal of my life. I was feeling good. I came home wanting to celebrate, maybe even tell her. I thought, maybe if I show her the numbers, she will respect me. Maybe we can fix this. I walked in and found suitcases in the hallway. Elena was sitting at the kitchen table. She looked calm. Cold. We need to talk, she said. Okay, I said, putting my keys down. What is going on? I am unhappy, Mark, she said. I have been unhappy for a long time. I feel like I am dragging a dead weight behind me. I need a partner who challenges me. Someone who understands ambition. Someone who is on my level. On your level, I repeated. Yes. Look, I don't want to be cruel. You are a nice man. You are steady. But steady isn't enough for me anymore. I have met someone. The air left the room. You met someone. It isn't physical yet, she said quickly, waving her hand as if that mattered. But it is emotional. He is a consultant for the firm. We speak the same language. He understands the pressure I am under. He is driven. When I look at him, I see a future. When I look at you, I see the past. She stood up. I want a divorce. I have already drafted the initial separation agreement. Since I am the primary earner, I am willing to be generous. I won't ask for alimony, obviously. You can keep your car. I will buy you out of your share of the house equity, which isn't much since I paid the down payment. We can keep this clean. She slid a document across the table. Sign this, and you can stay in the guest room until you find an apartment. I want this done fast. I looked at the document. It was a waiver of financial discovery. Essentially, it said we both agreed to walk away with what was in our own names, and we wouldn't look too closely at the other person's assets. She was trying to protect her money from me. She thought I would come after her pension or her savings. She thought she was the whale. I looked at her. I looked at the suitcases. I thought about the $300,000 contract I had signed that morning. I won't sign this, I said. She sighed, an exaggerated sound of exhaustion. Mark, don't be difficult. If you fight me, I will bury you. I have the best lawyers in the city. You can't afford a legal battle. You work at a warehouse. Just take the buyout and go. I am not signing a waiver of discovery, I said firmly. If we are doing this, we are doing it by the book. Full financial disclosure. Both sides. She laughed. It was a mean, sharp sound. Fine. If you want to waste money on lawyers to find out exactly how much richer I am than you, go ahead. But don't come crying to me when the legal fees eat up your entire savings account. I won't, I said. The reveal. Which brings us back to the conference room. Elena was still staring at the paper. Sterling, her lawyer, was flipping through the attached tax returns. He looked like he had swallowed a lemon. "This is impossible," Elena whispered. "Flow State Logistics? What is that?" "That is my company," I said. "I founded it 4 years ago. I write automated inventory management software for high-volume distribution centers." You write software?" She looked at me like I had grown a second head. "You don't know how to code. You just fix old radios." "I have a degree in systems management, Elena. And I taught myself Python and SQL 10 years ago. You just never asked." "But you work at the warehouse." "The warehouse is my lab," I explained. "It is where I test the algorithms. And honestly, I like the physical work. It keeps me grounded. It stops me from becoming the kind of person who judges someone based on their job title." Sterling cleared his throat. "Ms. Elena, if these numbers are accurate, and they appear to be, the marital assets are significantly larger than we anticipated." Elena looked at Sterling. "What does that mean?" "It means," my lawyer Sarah interjected, "that since this business was founded and built during the marriage, and since Mark used marital funds, however minimal, to support himself while building it, it is considered a marital asset. However," she paused for effect, "Mark has been keeping very detailed records. He has never commingled the business revenue with your joint accounts. He has never used your money to fund the business. And interestingly enough, you signed a post-nuptial agreement 3 years ago when you bought the house." Elena's eyes went wide. She remembered. When Elena bought the dream house, she was terrified that if we divorced, I would take half of it. So she bullied me into signing a post-nup. It stated that any assets acquired individually after the date of signing would remain the sole property of the individual, provided no joint funds were used to acquire them. She did it to protect the house and her future partner equity. "The post-nup," Elena breathed. "Yes," my lawyer smiled. "The post-nup regarding separate property and business interests. You insisted on it, Elena. You wanted to make sure Mark couldn't touch your partnership equity. But the language works both ways. Mark's business, which really took off after the signing of that agreement, and which has been funded entirely by its own revenue, is his separate property." Sterling looked at the post-nup copy included in the file. He closed his folder. He knew when he was beaten. "So," I said, leaning forward, "here is my counteroffer. I keep my business. You keep your partnership equity. We split the house 50-50 since my salary did contribute to the utilities and maintenance, regardless of what you claim. And we go our separate ways. Today." Elena wasn't looking at the papers anymore. She was looking at me. And for the first time, I saw the gears turning. I saw the calculation. She wasn't seeing the warehouse worker anymore. She was seeing a man worth millions. She was seeing the status, the power, and the money she worshipped. "Mark," she said, her voice softening. She reached across the table, trying to touch my hand. I pulled it back. "Mark, baby. This is amazing. Why didn't you tell me? We could have built an empire together." I was just stressed. I didn't mean what I said about the divorce. I was just looking for a reaction. I wanted you to fight for me. It was pathetic. It was the most transparent pivot I had ever seen. 2 minutes ago, I was dead weight. Now, I was an empire builder. "You didn't want me to fight for you," I said coldly. "You wanted to discard me because you thought I was broken. You met someone else, remember? The consultant? The guy who speaks your language." She flinched. "That was nothing. I was lonely. Mark, we can fix this. You are brilliant. I always knew you were brilliant. We can fire these lawyers. Let's go to dinner. Let's talk about flow state. I can help you with the legal side. I can help you expand." I stood up. I buttoned my Target jacket. "My business is doing just fine without you, Elena. In fact, it thrived specifically because you weren't involved. You would have suffocated it. You would have turned it into something flashy and hollow, just like everything else you touch." I looked at Sterling. "Draw up the papers based on the post-nup. I want to be single by Friday." The aftermath. The divorce was finalized a month ago. Because of the post-nup she forced on me, she got exactly 0% of my company. She got to keep her partnership equity, which she is now desperately trying to leverage because it turns out her consultant boyfriend wasn't as rich as she thought. He was actually in debt and looking for a sugar mama. I moved out of the house. I bought a nice, quiet place near the water. I still work at the warehouse 2 days a week. I told the owner the truth, and he laughed for 10 minutes straight. He kept me on as a senior logistics consultant, which basically means I walk around, check the systems, and chat with the guys on the floor. Elena has tried to contact me a dozen times. She sends texts reminiscing about our college days. She sent a letter apologizing for her behavior, claiming she was having a breakdown. I haven't responded. I saw her a week ago, actually. We were at the same intersection. She was in her luxury SUV, looking stressed, shouting into her Bluetooth headset. I was in my car. I didn't buy a Lamborghini. I didn't buy a Ferrari. I bought a fully restored, vintage Land Rover Defender. It is boxy, rugged, and efficient. I looked over at her. She didn't see me. She was too busy yelling at someone, probably trying to claw her way up another rung on a ladder that goes nowhere. I put my truck in gear and drove away. The best revenge isn't ruin. It isn't screaming. It's simply thriving where they said you would fail, and doing it so quietly that they don't even hear you leave until you are already gone. Update. I didn't expect this post to blow up like this, but I guess a lot of people can relate to being underestimated. I have had a few people asking for more details about the fallout and how the business actually works, so here is a bit more context. After the meeting in the lawyer's office, things at the house got incredibly uncomfortable while I was packing up. Remember, I agreed to move out, but I had a few days to get my things. Elena tried a new tactic, the victim. She spent 3 days walking around the house in a silk robe, weeping loudly whenever I was in earshot. She would accidentally leave out photo albums of our wedding on the coffee table. She tried to corner me in the kitchen to talk about our legacy. Mark, she said on the last day, tears streaming down her face. Money changes people. I am scared that this money has changed you. You have become so cold. I almost laughed. Elena, the money didn't change me. The money just gave me the ability to stop tolerating your disrespect. You were cold to me when I was poor. You don't get to call me cold now just because I'm not buying your act. I was never cold, she insisted. I pushed you. I wanted the best for you. I was trying to motivate you. Mocking me to your colleagues was motivation? Telling me I was a janitor was motivation. I was venting, she screamed. I have a high-pressure job. I needed to vent. Well, I said, picking up the last box of my books. Now you can vent to the consultant. Oh wait. I heard he moved back in with his parents in Ohio. Her face went red. Apparently, that was a sore subject. I also found out from a mutual friend that Elena is facing an audit at her firm. Apparently, in her effort to maintain her lifestyle while the divorce was pending, and assuming she was going to buy me out cheaply, she leveraged herself pretty heavily. Now that she has to buy me out of the house equity, which turned out to be more than she thought because the market spiked, she is cash poor. She has been telling people we grew apart because I was secretive and financially unfaithful. She is trying to spin the narrative that I hid assets illegally. Good luck with that. My lawyer, Sarah, is a shark. We disclosed everything at the appropriate legal time. There was no deception, just discretion. As for me, life is peaceful. I have started dating again, slowly. I met a woman named Claire. She is a high school science teacher. On our first date, she asked me what I did. I told her, I have a software company, and I consult for a logistics firm. She didn't ask how much money I made. She didn't ask what kind of car I drove. She asked, oh, do you enjoy it? Does it leave you time to hike? Because I love hiking. We went hiking last weekend. I wore my old warehouse flannel. She told me I looked handsome. I think I am going to be okay. Final thoughts. To anyone out there stuck in a relationship where your partner makes you feel small, get out. You don't need a secret $1 million business to leave. You just need to realize that your worth isn't tied to your paycheck, and it certainly isn't tied to someone else's opinion of your paycheck. Elena loved the idea of a power couple, but she only wanted the power for herself. She wanted a fan, not a partner. I am not a fan anymore. I am the main event. And the show is going great. My phone rang at 2:14 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the time because I was in the middle of a quarterly budget review with my team, and I never take personal calls during meetings. But the caller ID said University Bursar, and my son Leo was supposed to move into his dorm in 3 days. I stepped out of the conference room, assuming it was a formality about immunization records or a parking pass. It was not a formality. The woman on the line was polite but firm. She informed me that the tuition payment for the fall semester had been declined. Not delayed. Declined. Insufficient funds. I laughed. It was a reflexive, short sound. I told her that was impossible. I told her there was specifically $150,000 sitting in a dedicated educational trust account, an account that had been accumulating compound interest and monthly deposits for me for the last 12 years. I told her to run it again. She told me she had run it 3 times. The bank code was specific. The account was empty. I hung up. I did not panic. Panic is for people who do not have control of the situation, and I have spent my entire adult life ensuring I am never that person. I walked back into the meeting, dismissed my team for an early lunch, and walked to my office. I shut the door. I sat down. I pulled up the shared banking portal. Technically, per our divorce decree from a decade ago, my ex-wife Sarah was the custodian of this specific account. It was a concession I made during mediation to keep the house. I deposited the money. She managed the administrative side. It was meant to be a simple system. I trusted her with this one thing because Sarah, for all her faults, loved Leo. She was a helicopter parent. She was obsessed with his success. The idea that she would sabotage his future was not even a variable I had considered. I logged in. My access was view only, a safeguard she had insisted on years ago to prevent me from micromanaging her. I stared at the balance. $42.19. I refreshed the page. $42.19. I clicked on the transaction history. I expected to see a hack. I expected to see a wire transfer to Nigeria or a phishing scam. I was ready to call the fraud department. Instead, I saw names. Local names. Greg's Custom Auto, $4,500. Blue Horizon Travel Agency, $8,200. Seaside Resort and Spa, $3,100. Ticketmaster, $600. Cash withdrawal, $500. Cash withdrawal, $500. Cash withdrawal, $1,000. The list went on. It scrolled back 6 months. The entire timeline coincided exactly with the arrival of Greg. Greg is Sarah's boyfriend. He is 28 years old. Sarah is 46. Greg is a personal trainer and an entrepreneur who is always one investor away from launching the next big fitness app. I met him once. He shook my hand too hard and called me Bud. I downloaded the transaction history. I printed it. I put the papers in a folder. Then I called Sarah. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was light, airy. She asked if I was calling about the dorm drop-off schedule. I asked her where the money was. There was a silence. Not a confused silence. A calculated silence. The silence of someone who knew this conversation was coming, but hoped it would be later. She told me not to worry. She told me it was just moved. She said she shifted the funds to a high-yield opportunity because the bank interest rates were insulting. She said she was trying to grow the pot for Leo's grad school. I asked her why a high-yield opportunity appeared on the bank statement as a custom paint job for a Dodge Charger. The tone changed instantly. The airy voice vanished. She became the victim. She told me I was invading her privacy. She told me I had no right to snoop. She told me that Greg was in a bind and the car was necessary for his business image, which would eventually pay us back tenfold. I hung up. I did not yell. Yelling gives the other person something to react to. It gives them a foothold to say you are being abusive. I needed to be a wall. I left work. I drove to my son's current apartment, the one he shared with Sarah. Leo was there, packing boxes. He looked up when I walked in, grinning. He was holding a stack of textbooks. He was so excited. He had worked hard for this. He got into his first choice engineering program. He had the grades, he had the drive, and he thought he had the funding. I sat him down on the edge of his bed. I have done many difficult things in my life. I have fired people. I have buried parents. Telling my 18-year-old son that his mother had stolen his future to buy her boyfriend a lifestyle was the hardest thing I have ever done. I showed him the papers. I didn't editorialize. I didn't say your mother is a thief. I just laid out the bank statement. Leo read them. He traced the lines with his finger. He saw the dates. He saw the amounts. He looked at me. He asked if this was a mistake. He asked if maybe the bank labeled things wrong. I told him to call his mother. He put it on speaker. Sarah answered. When she heard Leo's voice, she burst into tears before he could even ask a question. She launched into a preemptive strike. She wailed about how hard it was to be a single mother. She talked about how lonely she had been until she met Greg. She said Greg had a vision, and that families support each other. She said she intended to put the money back before tuition was due, but the liquidity event for Greg's business was delayed by a week. Leo asked her a simple question. He asked if the money was gone. She said it wasn't gone. She said it was invested. Leo asked if he could pay his tuition today. She said no. Leo ended the call. He sat there for a long time. Then he stood up and threw a textbook at the wall. It hit the plaster with a dull thud and fell behind the dresser. He started crying. Not the loud, sobbing kind of crying, but the silent, shaking kind that hurts to watch. I told him to pack a bag. I told him he was coming to stay with me. I told him I would fix the tuition. I did not know how I was going to fix the tuition. I do well, but I don't have $50,000 liquid cash sitting around to replace a semester's payment on 24 hours notice. My assets are tied up in retirement accounts and home equity. The college fund was the liquidity. I drove Leo to my house. I made him steak. We ate in silence. The next morning, Sarah showed up at my door. She didn't text first. She just hammered on the wood until I answered. She looked frantic. She wasn't wearing her usual polished suburban mom costume. She was wearing sweatpants. She demanded to speak to Leo. I stood in the doorway. I told her Leo didn't want to speak to her. She tried to push past me. I didn't move. I am 6'2". She bounced off my shoulder. She started screaming that I was kidnapping her son. She screamed that I was turning him against her. I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me so Leo wouldn't have to hear this. I asked her what she wanted. She changed tactics. She lowered her voice. She reached out and touched my arm. She gave me that look she used to give me 20 years ago when she wanted me to skip work and go to the beach. She said we needed to be a team. She said this was a misunderstanding. Then she asked me for money. She said the landlord of her condo was threatening eviction because she was 2 months behind. She said Greg needed just a little more capital to finalize the deal that would pay back the college fund. She asked me for $10,000. She said if I gave her the $10,000, she could fix everything. I stared at her. I looked at this woman I had once pledged my life to. I looked for any sign of the person I thought I knew. I saw nothing. I saw a junkie. She wasn't addicted to drugs. She was addicted to the validation of a 28-year-old man who was using her. I told her no. She exploded. She called me selfish. She called me a miser. She said I always cared more about money than people. She said I was jealous of Greg because he was young and full of life and I was an old corporate drone. I told her to get off my property. She left, but not before screaming that she would sue me for parental alienation. I went back inside. Leo was standing in the hallway. He had heard everything. That afternoon, I went to the bank. I took a loan against my 401k. The penalties were steep, and the interest rate wasn't great, but it was the only way to get the cash immediately. I wired the tuition directly to the university. I paid for the full year, plus the housing, plus the meal plan. I sat Leo down. I showed him the confirmation number. I told him he was going to college. He hugged me. He held on tight. He told me he was sorry. He apologized for not checking the account himself. He apologized for believing her when she said everything was handled. I told him it wasn't his job to parent his mother. Leo moved into his dorm 2 days later. I helped him set up his room. We lofted the bed. We plugged in the mini fridge. I met his roommate, a nice kid from Ohio. When I drove away, I felt a weight lift off my chest. My son was safe. His future was secure. But Sarah wasn't done. 3 weeks into the semester, I got an email from Sarah. The subject line was family emergency. She wrote that Greg had been arrested. Apparently, the custom auto shop wasn't just fixing cars, it was moving stolen parts. The car she had bought him, using Leo's tuition money, was impounded as evidence. Sarah was not charged, but her assets were frozen pending investigation. She had no access to cash. She had no groceries. She was about to lose her condo. She asked for $5,000. She said it was for Leo, so he wouldn't have to worry about his mother being homeless. She said if I didn't pay, she would have to call Leo and ask him for help, and she didn't want to distract him from his studies. It was a threat. She was threatening to guilt-trip our son during his first month of college unless I paid her off. I forwarded the email to my lawyer. Then I forwarded it to Leo. I called Leo. I told him what was happening. I told him his mother was going to reach out. I told him the truth about the arrest. I told him she was safe physically, but she was in a mess of her own making. Leo asked me what he should do. I told him he didn't have to do anything. I told him he could block her number if he needed to focus. He didn't block her. He answered when she called. Later, he told me about the conversation. She had sobbed. She had begged. She had asked him to take out a student loan and send her the disbursement check. She told him that if he loved her, he would save her. Leo told her no. He told her that he loved her, but he wasn't going to set himself on fire to keep her warm. He told her she needed to get a job. He told her she needed to dump Greg. She hung up on him. That was 4 months ago. Since then, the fallout has been absolute. Sarah lost the condo. She had to move in with her sister, a woman who has never liked me but hates Greg even more. Greg is currently awaiting trial. It turns out he had a record in 2 other states for fraud. I am currently in the process of suing Sarah to formalize the theft of the trust funds. I don't expect to get the money back. She has nothing. The lawsuit is symbolic and practical. It creates a paper trail so that when tax season comes, I can prove the loss was theft, and it prevents her from ever claiming I owe her spousal support again. My lawyer says we have a slam-dunk case for a permanent change in financial circumstances. Leo is doing well. He made the dean's list his first semester. He comes home on weekends sometimes. We watch football. We grill. He doesn't talk about his mother much. Last week, Sarah sent me a letter. Handwritten. No return address. It was 4 pages long. In it, she blamed me for everything. She said if I had been a more attentive husband 12 years ago, we never would have divorced. She said if I hadn't been so controlling with the money, she wouldn't have felt the need to hide things. She said Greg was a good man who made a mistake, and I was a monster for judging him. But the last paragraph was the kicker. She wrote, "I know you think you won. I know you think you're the hero because you wrote a check. But you bought your son's love. I earned it by being his mother. One day he will realize that money isn't everything. P.S. My sister is charging me rent. I know you have the bonus from your Q3 sales. If you could find it in your heart to send just $2,000, I could get back on my feet and start paying you back for the college fund." I read the letter. I drank my coffee. Then I put the letter in the shredder. I didn't reply. I never will. The money is gone. The relationship is dead. But my son is an engineer in the making, and I am free. It was an expensive lesson, costing me $150,000 plus penalties. But looking at Leo, living his life, unburdened by her chaos, it was a bargain. I looked at my bank account on the morning the decree absolute arrived. It was not just empty. It was a crater where my life used to be. 42 years old. A vice president of sales. And I had exactly $300 to my name until the 15th of the month. The rest was gone. My ex-wife, Elena, had secured the house. She had primary custody of our 2 children, Leo and Maya. She had 60% of my net income garnished before it even hit my direct deposit. The court system had looked at my salary, looked at her inability to work despite her master's degree, and decided I was a wallet rather than a human being. I sat on the floor of my studio apartment. I say apartment, but it was a glorified closet above a dry cleaner that smelled permanently of harsh chemicals and regret. I did not have a chair. Elena had the chairs. Elena had the custom sectional we bought 3 years ago. Elena had the memory foam mattress. I had an air mattress that leaked slowly throughout the night, leaving me resting on the hard laminate by dawn. This is not a story about how much I missed her. I stopped missing her the day she told me she needed to find herself, and that finding herself involved sleeping with her personal trainer, a man named Gavin who wore tank tops to dinner and called me Bud. This is a story about the mathematics of survival. The first weekend I had the kids, the shame was a physical weight in my chest. Leo was 12. Maya was 9. They walked into the studio apartment and just stood there. They were used to a 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs with a pool and a media room. Now they were standing in a room where the kitchen sink was 3 feet from my bed. Maya asked where she was supposed to sleep. I pointed to the pull-out sofa I had bought secondhand from a guy on Craigslist. It smelled like old cigarettes, but I had covered it in enough Febreze to choke a horse. I told her it was like camping. She looked at me with eyes that were too old for her face and told me she hated camping. We ordered pizza because I did not have pots and pans yet. We sat on the floor and ate from the box. Leo was quiet. He was angry at the world, and I was the safest target for that anger. He asked why we could not go home. I had to explain that this was home now. Dad's home. I dropped them off on Sunday evening. Pulling up to the old house was like driving a knife into my own gut. The lawn was perfectly manicured. Gavin's truck was in the driveway. It was a lifted monstrosity that cost more than my annual alimony payments. Seeing it there in my spot sparked a rage so cold it made my hand shake on the steering wheel. Elena came to the door. She looked radiant. Of course she did. She had the house, the kids, the money, and the boyfriend. She looked at my 10-year-old sedan and smirked. She asked if I was eating enough because I looked gaunt. I told her I was fine. I drove away and screamed until my throat bled. Then I went back to the apartment, sat on the leaking air mattress, and made a spreadsheet. I have always been a numbers guy. Emotions are messy. Variables are unpredictable. But numbers do not lie. I looked at my garnishment. I looked at my rent. I looked at my living expenses. The math told me I would be in debt within 3 months just buying groceries. I needed a variable to change. I could not lower the alimony. That was locked in for 5 years. I could not lower the child support. That was calculated by the state. I could not kill Gavin, as tempting as that was. The only variable I could control was my income. But there was a catch. If I made more money at my current job, or got a promotion, Elena could take me back to court and ask for an adjustment. She was entitled to a percentage of my success. That was the law. If I worked harder, she got paid more. It was a system designed to kill ambition. I needed money she could not touch. Not illegal money. I am not a criminal. I needed money that didn't look like money. I needed equity. I needed a ghost income. I worked in enterprise software sales. I knew the market. I knew the players. And I knew that my company, while stable, was slow. There was a startup in the sector, a small aggressive firm called Nexus. They were bleeding cash but had incredible tech. They needed a sales strategist, but they couldn't afford a VP salary. I set up a meeting with their CEO, a guy named David who I had mentored years ago. We met at a diner 3 towns over. I laid it out for him. I told him I would consult for him. I would build his entire sales infrastructure. I would train his team. I would close his whales. David looked at me and asked what my rate was. I told him I didn't want a salary. I didn't want a consulting fee. If he paid me cash, it would show up on my tax returns, and my ex-wife would sniff it out and demand her 40% cut. I told him I wanted stock options. Restricted stock units. And I wanted them vested over 5 years, with a cliff. I wanted expense reimbursement for everything legitimate: car, phone, internet, client dinners which were actually just me eating alone. David asked why I would work for free for years. I told him I was playing the long game. He agreed. We signed the contract. I kept my day job to pay the garnishment and the rent. I worked my 9 to 5, let Elena bleed it dry, and then from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., I worked for Nexus. The first year was a blur of exhaustion. I existed on 4 hours of sleep. I lost 15 pounds. Elena loved it. Every time she saw me, she made a comment about how much the divorce had aged me. She told me I looked like a ghost. I played into it. I wore the same 3 shirts. I let my car get dirty. I complained about the price of gas. I became the pathetic ex-husband she wanted me to be. It fueled her ego. The happier she was with her narrative of winning, the less she looked at what I was actually doing. The kids were the hardest part. I refused to be the Disney dad. I couldn't afford to be. I couldn't take them to Disney World. I couldn't buy them the new PlayStation. Gavin bought them the PlayStation. He set it up in the living room I had painted. Leo told me Gavin was cool, because he had a boat. I had to offer something else. I offered consistency. When they came to the apartment, there were rules. We did homework. We cooked dinner together. Cheap meals, pasta, tacos, homemade pizza. I taught them how to cook. I taught Leo how to chop an onion without crying. I taught Maya how to make dough from scratch. We played board games because board games were a one-time purchase. We went hiking because hiking was free. At first, they hated it. They complained about the apartment. They complained about the lack of cable TV. But slowly, the rhythm set in. There was no screaming at my place. There was no passive-aggressive fighting. Elena and Gavin fought. The kids told me. They fought about money. They fought about Gavin's mess. They fought about Elena's spending. At my place, it was quiet. It was small, but it was ours. 6 months in, I hit my first major target for Nexus. I closed a deal with a logistics firm that was worth $3 million annually to the startup. My commission would have been $200,000. Instead, per my contract, I received $0 and 10,000 shares of stock priced at a strike price of pennies. I looked at the digital certificate. It was worthless on paper. But I knew the company. I knew the trajectory. I was banking my future while living in poverty. I continued to play the role of the defeated man. I had to be careful. If I showed up in a new car, Elena would know. If I moved to a better apartment, Elena would know. I had to stay in the dry cleaner apartment. I had to keep the air mattress for 3 months until I saved enough cash for my grocery budget to buy a real bed from a discount warehouse. The dynamic with Elena shifted around the 1-year mark. The honeymoon phase with Gavin was ending. I could see it in her emails. They became shorter, sharper. She started asking for extra money for things that child support was supposed to cover. Braces for Leo. Dance camp for Maya. Technically, per the decree, we split extraordinary medical and extracurriculars 50/50ths. But she sent me the bills with a note saying, I know things are tight, but they need this. I paid my share. I never argued. I sent the check for exactly 50%. One Tuesday, she called me. This was rare. Usually, we texted. She sounded frantic. The water heater in the big house had burst. It flooded the basement. The insurance would cover the damage, but the deductible was $2,000, and she needed to replace the unit immediately. She didn't have the cash. I asked where her savings were. She had taken $40,000 from our joint savings in the settlement. She told me it was tied up. Tied up meant spent. She asked if I could cover the whole thing and she would pay me back. I paused on the phone. I let the silence stretch for 10 seconds. I wanted her to feel the humiliation of asking the man she robbed for help. I told her I didn't have it. She exploded. She called me a deadbeat. She told me I didn't care about the kids having hot water. She threatened to call her lawyer. I told her to go ahead. My financial affidavit was clean. I had nothing. She hung up on me. 2 days later, Leo told me Gavin paid for it, but he shouted at Mom for an hour about it. Leo said Gavin punched a hole in the drywall in the garage. I wrote that down in my log. Date. Time. Witness account. I kept a log of everything. Year 2. Nexus was exploding. The software was industry standard. We were looking at a Series B funding round that would value the company at $50 million. My equity was starting to look real. I was exhausted though. Working 2 jobs is not sustainable forever. My day job performance was slipping. My boss called me into his office. He told me I seemed distracted. He asked if everything was okay at home. I told him the divorce was hard. It was an easy excuse. Everyone sympathizes with a sad divorced guy. He gave me a break. He lowered my quota for the quarter. I used the extra time to double down on Nexus. I started taking the kids to the library on my weekends. I told them I had study work to do. They sat and read or played on the library computers while I worked on my laptop, building sales decks and analyzing market trends. Maya got into reading fantasy novels. Leo got into coding. I helped him. We bonded over Python scripts. It was the first time in 2 years he looked at me with respect rather than pity. "Dad, you're actually good at this," he said one afternoon. "I used to be pretty smart before I became a wallet," I joked. He didn't laugh. He looked at me and said, "Mom says you're broke because you're lazy." That hurt. It stung more than the garnishment. "Mom is angry," I said carefully. "And sometimes people say things that aren't true when they're angry. I work very hard, Leo. I'm building something. It just takes time." "What are you building?" "A future," I said. "You just can't see it yet." The crack in Elena's life widened in year 3. Gavin moved out. I found out when I went to pick up the kids, and his truck was gone. The house looked neglected. The lawn was overgrown. There were weeds in the flower beds I used to tend. Elena looked tired. She had gained weight. She was wearing sweatpants that were stained. The smugness was gone, replaced by a frantic, nervous energy. She invited me in for coffee when I dropped the kids off. I knew it was a trap. I stood in the foyer. I didn't take my shoes off. She told me Gavin was a narcissist. She told me he had used her. She cried. She tried to hug me. I stood there, stiff as a board. This was the woman who told the judge I was emotionally abusive because I checked our credit card statements. This was the woman who took my grandmother's ring and sold it. I told her I was sorry she was having a hard time. She looked at me with teary eyes and said, "We had a good life, didn't we? Before." "We did," I said. "Then you ended it." "I was confused," she said. "I made a mistake." She was fishing. She wanted to see if the door was open. She wanted to see if she could come back to the safety of the man she had discarded. She realized the grass wasn't greener. It was just artificial turf painted over a septic tank. "I have to go, Elena," I said. "I have a meeting." On a Sunday night. Work is work. I left. I didn't look back. That night, David called me. Nexus was being acquired. A massive tech conglomerate was buying us out. My options were about to trigger. The deal was structured as a mix of cash and stock. My payout, based on the vesting schedule and the acquisition price, was going to be $1.2 million. I sat on my second-hand sofa and stared at the wall. $1.2 million. But I couldn't touch it. Not yet. The acquisition would take 6 months to close. And even then, if I took the cash, it would be income. Income in the year of receipt. If Elena found out, she could file for a modification of child support based on a significant change in circumstances. She could try to argue that this was work done during the marriage, even though it wasn't. Lawyers are sharks. They would smell blood. I needed a shield. I hired a forensic accountant and a shark of my own, a lawyer named Vance who specialized in high asset protection. Vance looked at my divorce decree. He looked at the Nexus contract. "You're walking a fine line," Vance said. "But you're on the right side of it." The options were granted post-divorce. The work was performed post-divorce. It's separate property. However, the income spike will trigger a child support review if she petitions for it. So how do I hide it? "You don't hide it," Vance said. "You defer it. You roll the proceeds into a holding company. You don't take a salary. You take loans against the assets. Debt isn't income." I didn't understand it fully, but I trusted him. We set up the structure. An LLC. A trust for the kids. The payout hit the LLC 6 months later. I was a millionaire on paper. I was still living above the dry cleaner. I wanted to buy a house. I wanted to buy a Porsche. I wanted to send Elena a screenshot of my bank balance. But I didn't. Discipline. I stayed in the apartment for another year. The turning point with the kids happened when Leo turned 14. He got in trouble at school. Fighting. He was angry. The school called Elena, but she was at work. She couldn't leave. They called me. I left my day job. I walked out of a quarterly review to go get him. I picked him up. He was sitting in the vice principal's office, sullen, a bruise on his cheek. We drove in silence. I didn't take him to Elena's. I took him to a diner. I ordered him a burger. You want to tell me what happened? I asked. Kid said something, Leo muttered. About what? About Mom. I knew the rumors. Small towns talk. Everyone knew Elena's affair imploded. Everyone knew she was struggling. People talk, Leo. It doesn't mean you have to listen. I hate it there, he said. He didn't look at me. He looked at his fries. I hate that house. It feels empty. She's always crying or yelling on the phone with credit card companies. There's no food. The fridge is always empty. My heart broke. I was paying $3,000 a month in support/alimony. There should be food. I want to live with you, Leo said. I live in a closet, Leo. I don't care. It's calm. That was the word. Calm. I realized then that I had won the war I didn't know I was fighting. I hadn't poisoned them against her. I hadn't bought them off. I had just been the rock. We have to follow the court order, I said. But we can talk to Mom. We didn't have to talk to Mom. The universe handled it. 3 months later, Elena called me. It was 9 p.m. She was sobbing. She was being foreclosed on. She hadn't paid the mortgage in 6 months. She had been using the alimony to pay off credit card debt she racked up with Gavin, and she let the house note slide, thinking she could catch up. She couldn't. The bank was taking the house. My house. The house I built. The house my children grew up in. I don't know what to do, she wailed. We're going to be on the street. How much do you owe? I asked. To bring it current? $40,000. To pay it off? $300,000. She owed $300,000 on a house worth $600,000. There was equity there, but she couldn't access it because her credit was destroyed. I can't help you, Elena, I said. I don't have $40,000. You have to. For the kids. I pay my support. You spent it. This is on you. I hung up. Then I called Vance. She's foreclosing, I said. Good, Vance said. Wait for the auction. No. I don't want the kids put out by a sheriff. Then you buy the note, Vance said. Your LLC buys the mortgage from the bank. You become the bank. It was brilliant. And it was ruthless. My LLC, Phoenix Holdings, approached the bank. Distressed mortgages are sold all the time. The bank didn't want to deal with a foreclosure and eviction. They just wanted their money. Phoenix Holdings bought the mortgage for face value plus a small premium. Elena didn't know Phoenix Holdings was me. She just got a letter saying her mortgage had been sold to a new servicer. Then, Phoenix Holdings initiated foreclosure proceedings. Elena called me in a panic. The new bank is aggressive. They're giving me 30 days to vacate. That sounds terrible, I said. Can we stay with you? I live in a studio, Elena. There is no room. Take the kids then. Please. Until I figure this out. Okay, I said. I'll take the kids. I went to my landlord at the dry cleaner. I told him I was moving out. I went to a realtor. I didn't buy a mansion. I bought a 4-bedroom townhouse in the same school district. It was nice. Clean. Modern. I put 50% down. My mortgage payment was lower than my rent. I moved the kids in. They had their own rooms. They had desks. They were shocked. Dad, did you rob a bank? Maya asked. I saved, I said. I saved every penny for 3 years. It was a half-truth. Elena moved into a rental apartment. A bad one. Worse than my studio. She filed for a modification of custody. She wanted the kids back. She realized that without the kids, the child support stopped. And without the house, She had no leverage. We went to court. I walked in with Vance. Elena had a legal aid lawyer because she couldn't afford her high-priced shark anymore. She argued that I was hiding money. She pointed to the townhouse. Vance stood up. He produced the documents. The townhouse was rented, technically, from my own LLC. The car was a lease. My W-2 income from my day job was exactly the same as it was 3 years ago. Then Vance dropped the hammer. He produced the foreclosure documents. He produced the credit card statements showing she spent child support on vacations and designer clothes while the mortgage went unpaid. He produced the affidavit from Leo stating he didn't want to live with her because there was no food in the house. The judge looked at Elena. He looked at the evidence. "Ms. Davis," the judge said, "you have squandered significant assets. You have failed to provide a stable home. Mr. Davis has, despite his limited means, provided a stable environment. I got primary custody. Elena got visitation every other weekend. The child support flipped. She now owed me. It was a token amount because she was broke, but the flow of money from me to her stopped. The alimony continued, but with the child support gone, I was suddenly cash flow positive by $3,000 a month. But the final twist was the house. Elena moved out. The house sat empty. Phoenix Holdings completed the foreclosure. I owned the house. I drove over there on a Saturday. The key was in the lockbox. I walked in. It smelled like mildew and neglect. The walls were scuffed. The carpet was stained. I walked through the rooms. I remembered painting the nursery. I remembered Christmas mornings in the living room. I could have moved back in. I could have renovated it and lived in my triumph. But I realized I didn't want it. It was a monument to a dead marriage. I called a contractor. I told him to gut it. Fix everything. Paint it neutral. I put it on the market 3 months later. The market was hot. It sold in a week for $650,000. After paying off the mortgage, paying myself back, and the renovation costs, Phoenix Holdings cleared $200,000 in profit. I took that money and put it into the kids' college funds. Fully funded. They would never have to worry about debt. I am 5 years out now. The alimony ends next month. That is the final tether. Elena knows I'm doing okay, but she doesn't know the extent of it. She thinks I just got lucky with a promotion. She doesn't know about Nexus. She doesn't know about the LLCs. She doesn't know that I am technically retired at 47, working as a consultant just to keep up appearances. I see her when she picks up the kids. She looks old. Bitterness ages you faster than the sun. She complains about her job. She complains about her landlord. She asks if I can advance her next month's alimony. I always say no. I'm on a budget, Elena, I say. You know how it is. She nods. I know. It's tough for everyone. She has no idea. Last week, Leo asked me about the divorce. He's 17 now. Driving. Smart kid. Why didn't you fight harder back then? He asked. Why did you let her take everything? I didn't let her take everything, I said. I let her take the things that didn't matter. She took the furniture. She took the house. She took the status. What did you keep? I kept my sanity, I said. And I kept my capacity to build. You can strip a man of his possessions, Leo. But if you don't strip him of his drive, he'll just build it all back again. Better. He looked at me. She thinks you're still struggling, you know. She tells us we have to be careful asking you for money. I smiled. Good. Let her think that. Why? Because the best revenge isn't burning the other person's house down, I said. It's building a castle next door and not inviting them in. I have a date tonight. A woman named Sarah. She's a doctor. She's kind. She pays for her own dinner. She doesn't know how much money I have, and she doesn't care. She likes me because I listen. She likes me because I'm calm. We're going to a nice restaurant. I'm going to wear a suit. A new one. I rebuilt my life brick by brick. I did it in the dark. I did it while eating ramen and sleeping on air. I did it while being ridiculed. And the best part? Elena will never truly know. She will live the rest of her life thinking she won the divorce, while wondering why she feels like she lost. She took the house. She took the kids. She took the income. But she forgot to take the man. And that was her fatal mistake. The weeks following the sale of the old house were strange. I felt a phantom limb syndrome for the stress I had carried for years. It was gone. The crushing pressure to survive, to outmaneuver, to hide, it had abated. Now, it was just management. I focused on the kids. Maya was struggling with the transition to high school. She was quiet, withdrawn. The divorce had hit her differently than Leo. Leo got angry, Maya got sad. She missed the idea of a family. She missed the version of her mother that existed before Gavin. I decided it was time to spend some of the hidden capital. Not on things, but on experiences. Pack a bag, I told them on a Friday afternoon. Where are we going? Maya asked, looking up from her phone. Airport. Dad, we have school on Monday, Leo said. It's a long weekend. Teacher in service. Did you forget? We flew to heavy snow. Colorado. I had rented a cabin. Not a luxury resort, just a cabin with a fireplace and a view of the Rockies. I hired a ski instructor. For 3 days, we didn't talk about Mom. We didn't talk about money. We fell down mountains and laughed about it. On the last night, sitting by the fire, Maya looked at me. Mom says you can't afford this, she said. Mom worries, I said. I saved up. A special treat. She asked me to take pictures of the place, Maya said. She wanted to know if it was a timeshare. What did you tell her? I didn't take any pictures, Maya said. She threw a wrapper into the fire. It's none of her business. I felt a surge of pride so strong it almost hurt. The boundaries I had modeled were finally taking root. When we got back, reality set in. Elena's car broke down. The transmission. It was a $3,000 repair. She didn't have it. She called me, demanding I pay for it because she needed the car to transport the children for her visitation. It was a clever angle, framing it as a necessity for the kids. I can pick them up and drop them off, I offered. You don't need to drive. I need a car to get to work, she screamed. Then take the bus. Or ask your parents. My parents are tired of helping me. Join the club, I muttered. What? Nothing. I'm not fixing your car, Elena. She hung up. She didn't take the bus. She took a payday loan. I saw the paperwork on her counter when I dropped the kids off. The interest rate was predatory. 300% APR. She was digging a hole she would never climb out of. I almost felt bad. Almost. Then I remembered the air mattress. I remembered her laughing when I told her I was eating rice and beans. The empathy evaporated. The final year of alimony began. 12 payments left. I started a countdown on my phone. At work, my real job, the one I kept for cover, things were changing. The company was downsizing. My boss, the one who cut me slack, was let go. The new management was aggressive. They wanted blood. They called me in. They wanted to increase my quota by 40%. They wanted me to travel 3 weeks a month. I can't do that, I said. I have primary custody of my children. Then maybe this role isn't for you anymore, the new VP said. He was young. Hungry. He reminded me of Gavin. In the past, I would have panicked. I would have begged. I would have sacrificed my time with the kids to keep the paycheck. But I had Phoenix Holdings. I had the investment accounts. You're right, I said. It's not. I quit. I walked out of the building with a box of personal effects at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. The sun was shining. I felt lighter than air. I didn't tell Elena I quit. The decree said I had to notify her of any change in employment that would affect my ability to pay support. But since she was paying me support, technically, and I had prepaid the alimony for the year into an escrow account just in case, I was in the clear legally. I decided to take a sabbatical. I spent the days gardening. The townhouse had a small yard. I planted tomatoes. I learned how to bake sourdough. I became the dad who was always there. I picked the kids up from school every day. I volunteered at the science fair. I coached Leo's soccer team. The other parents asked what I did. I'm a consultant, I said. Vague. Respectable. Elena found out I wasn't going to the office because a friend of hers saw me at the grocery store at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. She called. Suspicious. Did you get fired? I'm transitioning roles, I said. Does this mean the alimony check is going to bounce? The check will clear, Elena. It always does. You better not be trying to lower your income to get more support from me. I have nothing left. I don't want your money, Elena. I never have. She paused. You're up to something. I'm just living my life. The paranoia was eating her alive. She couldn't understand how I was surviving without the corporate grind. She assumed I was dealing drugs or gambling. She actually called the police for a welfare check on the kids, claiming she suspected illegal activity in the home. 2 officers showed up at my door at dinner time. We were eating lasagna. We received a report, the officer said, looking embarrassed. Concerns about narcotics distribution? I laughed. I invited them in. I'm baking bread, officers. Would you like a slice? They looked around. They saw the clean house. The kids doing homework at the table. The smell of fresh basil and garlic. They apologized. Ex-wife? One of them asked. Ex-wife, I confirmed. We see it a lot. Sorry to disturb you. I called Vance the next day. She's escalating. She's desperate, Vance said. She knows the alimony train is ending. She's trying to find a lever to pull. Send her a cease and desist. Harassment. Vance sent the letter. Elena went quiet. The day the final alimony payment cleared was a Tuesday. I watched the notification pop up on my phone. Transfer complete. I opened a bottle of wine. A really expensive bottle. A 2015 Cabernet I had bought with my first Nexus bonus and saved for this exact moment. I poured a glass. I sat on my back patio. The townhouse complex was quiet. I was free. Legally, financially, emotionally free. I decided it was time for the next phase. I didn't want to live in the townhouse forever. It was a stepping stone. I started looking at land. I wanted to build. Not in the suburbs. Further out. Where the air was clean and the neighbors were trees. I found a plot. 10 acres with a stream. It was beautiful. I bought it cash through Phoenix Holdings. I sat down with Leo and Maya. How would you guys feel about building a house? I asked. Like, with hammers? Maya asked. No. Well, maybe a little. I mean designing it. Together. Whatever you want. Leo's eyes lit up. Can I have a server room? You can have a server room, I agreed. Can I have a window seat? Maya asked. For reading. You can have a tower if you want. We spent the next year designing it. It was our project. It brought us closer than ever. We argued over tile choices. We debated the merits of gas versus induction stoves. When we broke ground, Elena heard about it. She confronted me at Leo's high school graduation. It was the first time I had seen her in person in 6 months. She looked frail. Her hair was thinning. I heard you're building a mansion, she hissed. It's a house, Elena. Where did you get the money? You've been unemployed for 2 years. I invest well. You hit it, she screamed. People turned to look. We were in the parking lot. Leo was holding his diploma, looking mortified. Elena, I said, my voice low and hard. Stop. You fraud. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to reopen the settlement. Go ahead, I said. My books are open. Every penny I have was earned after the date of separation. My lawyer has the timeline ready. Do you have $5,000 for a retainer? Because no lawyer will take your case on contingency. She deflated. She knew I was right. She didn't have $5,000. She didn't have 500. It's not fair, she whispered. Fair, I said, is a place where you judge pigs. This is reality. You wanted out. You got out. You wanted the assets. You got them. You just didn't know how to keep them. I walked away. Leo walked with me. He didn't look back at her. We moved into the new house last month. It's spectacular. Modern, glass, wood. Hidden in the trees. I have a home office now. A real one. I sit there and manage my investments. I've started angel investing in other startups. I help young founders who are hungry, like David was. I met a guy last week. Young kid, going through a nasty divorce. His wife was taking him to the cleaners. He looked shell-shocked. I bought him a coffee. It feels like the end of the world, he told me. It is, I said. It's the end of that world. But you can build another one. How? He asked. She took everything. Start with the variables, I told him. Control the variables you can. Ignore the ones you can't. And never, ever let her see you bleed. I gave him my card. Call me if you need advice. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a guy who knows the math. He looked at the card. It just said my name and Phoenix Holdings. What's Phoenix Holdings? He asked. It's what happens when you rise from the ashes, I said. I went home to my kids. We made dinner. Tacos. Tradition is important. Maya is off to college next year. I'm paying cash. Leo is looking at engineering schools. My life is full. It is quiet. It is mine. Elena is still in the rental apartment. I hear she's dating a guy named Mike. Mike has a motorcycle and a history of DUIs. The cycle continues. I don't hate her anymore. Hate takes energy. I just feel a distant pity, like watching a car crash in a movie. She took the house, the kids, and half the income. I quietly rebuilt my life without her knowing. And in the end, the silence was the loudest victory of all. But the story doesn't quite end there. Because life, unlike a court case, doesn't have a neat gavel bang to signal the conclusion. There is an aftermath. There are ripples. The ripples hit 6 months after we moved into the new house. It was a Tuesday. I was in my office, analyzing a pitch deck for a biotech firm, when the doorbell rang. We are deep in the woods. Nobody just drops by. I checked the security camera. It was a process server. My stomach tightened. Old reflexes die hard. Had she found a loophole? Was she suing for custody again? I opened the door. The man handed me a thick envelope. Mr. Davis. Yes. You've been served. He walked away. I opened the envelope standing in the driveway. It wasn't from Elena. It was from the IRS. An audit. A comprehensive, deep-dive audit of my personal finances, my LLCs, and the last 7 years of tax returns. My heart hammered. I was clean. I knew I was clean. Vance and my accountant were meticulous. But an audit is violence. It is an invasion. And it is expensive. I read the cover letter. It was triggered by a whistleblower report. Elena. She couldn't sue me, so she reported me for tax fraud. She assumed that because I had money she didn't know about, it must be illegal. She had weaponized the government against me. I went back inside and called Vance. She pulled the trigger, I said. IRS audit. Vance sighed. She's scorching the earth. If she can't have the crops, she'll salt the fields. What do? We open the books. We give them everything. If you're clean, you're clean. But it's going to take months. And she's hoping they find something, anything, so she can use it in family court to prove you hid assets. The next 6 months were a nightmare of a different kind. IRS agents are not like family court judges. They don't care about emotion. They care about receipts. They sat in my dining room. They went through every transaction. Every Nexus option grant. Every transfer to Phoenix Holdings. Every expense reimbursement. I had to explain the fake poverty. Why, the agent asked, looking at my bank statements from year 2, did you maintain a balance of only $300 in your checking account while your LLC held $400,000? Because I didn't want my ex-wife to know I had money, I said honestly. Is that illegal? The agent asked. No. It's asset protection. As long as I paid my taxes on the LLC income, where I store the post-tax money is my business. He nodded. He didn't smile. They dug deeper. They interviewed David at Nexus. They interviewed my old boss. They looked for the smoking gun. They found nothing. My accountant was a genius. Every penny was accounted for. Every tax obligation met. After 6 months, I got the letter. No change report. I owed nothing. I was cleared. But the legal fees to defend the audit cost me $50,000. Elena had cost me 50 grand from beyond the grave of our marriage. I was furious. This broke the Grey Rock rule. This was an attack. Can I sue her? I asked Vance. Malicious prosecution? Defamation? You can, Vance said. But she has no money. You'll spend another 20 grand to get a judgment against a woman who has negative net worth. You can't squeeze blood from a stone. I don't want money. I want her to stop. She won't stop, Vance said. Not until she finds a new target. You need to make yourself boring again. The audit failed. That's the victory. Don't engage. It was the hardest advice to follow. I wanted to drive to her apartment and scream at her. I wanted to shake her. But I didn't. Instead, I took the no-change letter from the IRS, framed a copy of it, and mailed it to her. No note. No letter. Just the document stating I was clean. It was petty. I admit it. But it felt good. She never acknowledged it. But the attacks stopped. She realized the government couldn't hurt me either. She was out of ammo. The final chapter of this saga, at least the part that involves her, happened last Christmas. Leo was home from his first semester of college. Maya was a senior. Elena was supposed to pick them up for Christmas Eve. It was her year. 2 p.m. came. No show. 3 p.m. No show. The kids were sitting in the living room, bags packed. They weren't checking their phones. They knew. At 4 p.m., my phone rang. It was a hospital. Elena had collapsed at work. Exhaustion. Malnutrition. Stress. I drove the kids to the hospital. We walked into her room. She looked tiny in the bed. Wires. Tubes. She looked 80 years old. She opened her eyes and saw us. She saw me standing behind the kids. She started to cry. Not the manipulative tears of the divorce. Real, broken tears. I'm sorry, she whispered. The kids hugged her. They were gentle. They were better people than she deserved. I stood by the door. She looked at me over Maya's shoulder. You won, she mouthed. I shook my head. Nobody won, Elena. You just lost. I left the room to give them space. I went to the cafeteria and drank bad coffee. I paid her hospital bill. I didn't tell her. I didn't tell the kids. I just went to billing, gave them my card, and paid the deductible and the copays. It was about $4,000. Why? Because she is the mother of my children. Because I could. Because money doesn't matter to me the way it used to. It's just a tool. And in that moment, the tool was used to buy my children peace of mind so they wouldn't have to worry about their mother's debt. I never told her. Let her think it was a clerical error. Let her think the universe gave her a break. It was the final act of release. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. I drove home alone that night. The kids stayed at the hospital. The house was quiet. I walked out to the deck. The snow was falling. The woods were silent. I thought about the man I was 5 years ago. The man on the floor. The man who thought his life was over. I raised a glass to him. You did good, kid, I said to the darkness. You did good. I went inside, locked the door, and turned off the lights. The rebuild was complete. The foundation was set. And for the first time in a decade, I slept through the night. Update: 3 years later. I didn't expect to write this down, but looking back at the logs I kept during the divorce, it feels necessary to close the loop. Life has a way of surprising you when you stop trying to force it. Leo graduated with an engineering degree. He works for an aerospace company now. He's brilliant. He has a girlfriend who treats him with respect. He manages his money with a rigor that makes me smile. He learned. Maya is in law school. She wants to be a family law attorney. I want to help the good dads, she told me when she applied. And the good moms. I want to stop the bullies. I tried to warn her about the burnout, but she has my stubbornness. She'll be great. Elena is still around. She moved in with her parents eventually. It humbled her. She works at a bakery now. It's simple work. She seems calmer. We talk occasionally, strictly about the kids' logistics. There is no warmth, but the venom is gone. It's a business transaction that has mostly expired. And me? I married Sarah, the doctor. We had a small wedding in the backyard of the house I built. No big fanfare. Just close friends and the kids. Sarah knows everything now. I showed her the books before we got married. I wanted full transparency. She looked at the numbers, then looked at me. "You really lived on ramen with this in the bank?" she asked. I had to. "You're a crazy person," she said, kissing me. "But you're my crazy person." We signed a prenup. Her idea, not mine. She has assets too. We both understand that marriage is love, but divorce is business. It's not unromantic, it's pragmatic. It protects us both. I still consult for startups. I still work hard. But I don't grind. I take weekends off. I fish. I read. I realized that the quietly rebuilding wasn't just about the money. The money was the shield, but the rebuilding was internal. I had to rebuild my sense of self-worth. I had to learn that I wasn't just a provider. I wasn't just a paycheck. I was a person worthy of respect. For anyone reading this who is sitting on the floor of a studio apartment, staring at a negative bank balance, feeling the walls closing in, it is not over. You are in the first chapter of the sequel. The villain has taken the loot, but they haven't taken the hero's ability to fight. Don't scream. Don't fight them in the mud. You'll just get dirty and they like it there. Go quiet. Go deep. Work in the dark. Build your skills. Build your discipline. Build your assets in places they can't see. Be the gray rock. Be boring. Be dismissed. Let them underestimate you. It is your greatest tactical advantage. And one day, you will wake up in a house you own, with peace in your heart, and you will realize that they didn't take your life. They just cleared the lot so you could build a better one. I'm going to go now. Sarah is calling me for dinner. We're having pasta. Homemade. Just like I taught the kids. It tastes like victory. It tastes like freedom. Edit, addressing some questions from the DMs. Since this story blew up a bit, I want to clarify a few things. 1. How did you legally hide the assets? I want to be very clear, I did not hide assets in the illegal sense. I did not bury cash in the backyard. Everything was disclosed on my tax returns. However, in my state, and check your local laws, assets acquired after the date of separation are generally separate property. The income from the startup options was realized years post-divorce. The hiding was social, not legal. I didn't flash the cash. I didn't change my lifestyle. Elena didn't know to look because I looked poor. If she had hired a forensic accountant during the modification hearing, she might have found the income, but she would have had to prove it was relevant to child support. Since I was already paying the max calculation based on the state cap, showing more income wouldn't have necessarily increased the payment significantly in my jurisdiction. The trick wasn't tax evasion, it was lifestyle suppression. 2. Did you really pay her hospital bill? Yes. I know many of you think I'm an idiot for that. She didn't deserve it. You're right. She didn't. But I didn't do it for her. I did it so my children wouldn't have a mother crippled by medical debt. If she went bankrupt, she would lean on them. By clearing the deck, I protected Leo and Maya's future inheritance/burden. It was a strategic move, not a romantic one. 3. Is Phoenix Holdings real? It's a pseudonym for the story, obviously. But the structure is real. If you have assets, put them in an LLC. Protect yourself. One lawsuit can ruin you. 4. How did you deal with the loneliness? That was the hardest part. The first year, I thought I would die from the silence. I filled it with work. That's a double-edged sword. It made me rich, but it made me dull. I had to relearn how to be a human. My advice? Get a dog. I couldn't have one in the apartment, but if you can, get one. Unconditional love is a powerful antidote to a narcissist's rejection. 5. Do you regret the marriage? I used to. I used to wish I had never met her. But then I look at Leo and Maya. They are the best things in the world. If I hadn't married Elena, they wouldn't exist. So, I accept the price. The marriage was the tuition I paid for two incredible human beings and a masterclass in resilience. Expensive tuition? Sure. But I earned it back. Stay strong, kings. The dawn is coming. You just have to survive the night. My brother asked me to co-sign his loan. 2 years later, I found out he used my name to destroy my credit. The humiliation of being rejected for a mortgage is a specific type of nausea. It is cold and heavy and settles right in the center of your chest. I was sitting in a plush gray chair across from a man named David who had been smiling at me and my fiancée Sarah for the last hour. We had calculated everything. We had the down payment saved through 3 years of aggressive budgeting. We had the income history. We had the tax returns. We were supposed to be the easy clients. The slam dunk. Then David clicked his mouse a few times, his smile faltered, and the air left the room. He turned the monitor away from us. He cleared his throat. He told us there was a problem with the credit pull. I laughed. I actually laughed because I thought it was a system error. I have never missed a payment in my life. I pay my credit card off in full every single month. I have a spreadsheet for my grocery budget. I am the boring one. I am the responsible one. David did not laugh. He slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was not a system error. My credit score, which I had checked 6 months ago and saw sitting at a healthy 780, was now a 420. That is not just bad. That is catastrophic. That is the kind of score you get when you actively decide to stop participating in society. I stared at the number. Sarah grabbed my hand, her grip tight, her palms sweating. She asked what was on the report. David listed them off. There was a repossession order. There were 4 credit cards in collections. There was a personal loan that had defaulted 3 months ago. And there was the business loan. The big one. The one showing a balance of $80,000 with 0 payments made in the last 6 months. I knew exactly what had happened. The room spun, but the clarity was absolute. I did not need to ask who had opened these accounts. I did not need to wonder if I had been hacked by a stranger in a distant country. The name of the business attached to the loan was Apex Landscapes. That was my brother's company. My stomach turned over. I looked at Sarah, and I saw the fear in her eyes. The sudden realization that the house we had just spent 2 hours discussing, the nursery we had planned, the backyard for the dog we wanted, was gone. It was all gone. And it was gone because I had signed a piece of paper 2 years ago at a family barbecue while eating a burger and listening to my mother tell me I needed to support my brother's dreams. I walked out of that office in a daze. I did not scream. I did not cry. I felt a cold, mechanical rage building in my gut. I drove Sarah home in silence. She tried to ask questions, but I told her I needed to see the full report before I said anything. I dropped her off and told her I was going to handle it. I drove to a parking lot behind a grocery store and pulled up the full credit report on my phone. I paid the fee for the detailed view. I scrolled through the pages of disaster. It was worse than David had said. It wasn't just the loan I co-signed. That loan was there, yes, but it was delinquent. But below it were 5 other accounts. Credit cards opened in my name. A line of credit for business supplies opened in my name. The mailing address for all of them was my parents' house. The email address was a variation of my name that I never use, one that my brother Liam used to use for his gaming accounts. He had not just defaulted on the loan I agreed to. He had stolen my identity. He had used my strong credit history, the one I built for a decade, as a blank check to fund a lifestyle he could not afford. I sat in my car and remembered the day he asked me. I replayed the conversation in my head, dissecting every smile, every promise, every guilt trip my parents threw my way. It was 2 years ago. We were at my parents' house for the 4th of July. Liam has always been the charismatic one. He is 2 years younger than me, taller, better looking, and completely incapable of holding down a traditional job. He calls himself an entrepreneur. I call him a liability. But back then, I still wanted to believe him. I wanted to have that brotherly bond where we help each other succeed. He had this idea for a high-end landscaping business. He had the trucks lined up, he said. He had the contracts with the wealthy subdivisions. He just needed capital for the equipment. Banks wouldn't touch him because his credit was shot from a failed dropshipping venture the year before. He cornered me by the grill. He had a beer in one hand and a folder of spreadsheets in the other. He showed me the numbers. They looked good. He had projected revenue, operating costs, profit margins. It looked professional. I am an accountant. I look at numbers all day. I audited his plan right there on the patio. It made sense. The logic held up. If he got the contracts, he could pay the loan. He asked me to co-sign. Just for the initial equipment loan. $30,000. He swore on his life he would refinance it into his own name within 12 months once the business had cash flow. He looked me in the eye. He said he wanted to make the family proud. He said he was tired of being the screw-up. I hesitated. I told him $30,000 was a lot of money. I told him co-signing meant I was fully liable if he didn't pay. He nodded. He said he knew that. He said that was why he was asking me, because I was the only one who trusted him. Then my mother walked over. She saw the folder. She saw my hesitation. She put her hand on my shoulder. She told me that family helps family. She said Liam was finally turning a corner. She said if I didn't help him, I was holding him back from his potential. My father chimed in from the lawn chair. He said I was in a good position, I had a good job, I could afford to take a little risk for my brother. They ganged up on me. Not with malice, but with that suffocating, weaponized love that dysfunctional families specialize in. They made me feel like a miser for worrying about my own financial safety. So I signed. I signed the documents the next week. I gave him my information. I gave him a copy of my ID. I trusted him. I looked down at the credit report on my phone. The $30,000 loan was there. It was almost maxed out still, interest piling up. But then there were the others. An American Express Platinum card. Limit $20,000. Balance $22,000. Status, charged off. A Chase Sapphire Reserve. Limit $15,000. Balance $14,000. Status, 120 days past due. An auto loan for a heavy-duty pickup truck. Repossession initiated. He had used my personal information from the loan application to open everything else. He had everything he needed. My social security number. My date of birth. My address history. And because the mail went to our parents' house, where I lived for a few months after college, I never saw the statements. I never saw the warnings. I had paperless billing set up for my own accounts, so I never checked the physical mail when I visited. He had calculated this. This was not an accident. This was not a business failing. This was systematic fraud. I started the engine. I was not going to my apartment. I was going to my parents' house. It was a Tuesday evening. I knew they would be there. I knew Liam would likely be there too, probably eating their food and talking about his next big break. The drive took 40 minutes. I spent every minute of it refining my anger. I did not want to scream. Screaming is for people who have lost control. I had not lost control. I had been robbed. I needed to be cold. I needed to be precise. I needed to act like the accountant I am. I needed to audit my family. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw it. The truck. The massive, black, lifted pickup truck that Liam had been driving for the last year. He told us he leased it through the business. He told us the company was paying for it. I looked at the license plate. I checked the VIN number against the repossession order on my phone. It matched. That was my truck. I technically owned that monstrosity. I walked up to it and kicked the tire. It hurt my foot, but the pain felt grounding. I unlocked the front door with my key. I could hear the television. I could hear laughter. They were watching a game show. I walked into the living room. My mother looked up and smiled. My father waved a hand. Liam was sprawled on the recliner, a bowl of popcorn on his lap. He looked healthy. He looked happy. He was wearing a designer watch. I checked the credit report in my mind. Yes, there was a jewelry store charge on the Amex. $5,000. I was wearing a cheap digital watch. He was wearing my credit score on his wrist. I stood in front of the television. I blocked the screen. "Hey, move," Liam said, chuckling. "Final Jeopardy is coming up." I did not move. I looked at my parents. We need to talk. Now. My mother sensed the tone immediately. The smile dropped. What's wrong? Is it Sarah? Is everyone okay? Sarah is devastated, I said. Because we just found out we can't buy a house. Because my credit score is 420. Liam went still. He stopped chewing. The room went very quiet. What do you mean? My father asked, sitting up. You have great credit. You always have. I did, I said. Until my identity was stolen. I looked directly at Liam. By my brother. Liam stood up. He tried to look offended. He tried to summon that righteous indignation he uses when he gets caught in a lie. Whoa, hold on. That's a heavy accusation. You think I stole your identity? I have my own business. I don't need your credit. I held up my phone. I have the report, Liam. I have the accounts. American Express. Chase. The truck outside. All in my name. All mailed to this address. All delinquent. My mother stood up. She looked between us. There must be a mistake. Liam, tell him it's a mistake. Liam's face changed. The offense melted away, replaced by a cornered, frantic look. Look, it's not what it looks like. I added you as an authorized user to build the business credit. I was going to pay it off. The contracts got delayed. It's a cash flow issue. I was going to tell you once I fixed it. You opened credit cards in my name, I said. My voice was steady. You forged my signature. That is not a cash flow issue. That is fraud. That is a felony. Don't use that word, my mother snapped. She turned on me. Don't you dare speak about your brother like that. He is family. He stole $80,000 from me. I shouted. The control slipped for a second. He ruined my future. I cannot buy a home. I cannot get a car loan. I might lose my security clearance at work if they run a check. Do you understand? He didn't just borrow money. He torched my life. I was going to pay it back. Liam yelled. You have plenty of money. You have a savings account. You have a 401k. I have nothing. I was trying to build something. Why are you so selfish? You care more about a number on a screen than your own brother trying to survive. Survive. I pointed at the window. You drive a $60,000 truck. You are wearing a $5,000 watch. You bought VIP tickets to Coachella last month. I saw the charge. That is not survival. That is theft. My father stood up. He looked tired. He looked old. Okay. Calm down. We can fix this. How much is it? We can make a payment plan. It is over $100,000 total, I said, including the interest and penalties. Can you write a check for that, Dad? My father paled. He sat back down. That's a lot. I can fix it, Liam said. He was pacing now. I have a deal coming through next month. A big landscaping contract for a new office park. It pays out $50,000 up front. I'll pay off the cards. I'll bring the loan current. Just don't report it. Don't call the bank and say it was fraud. If you do that, they'll come after me. They should come after you, I said. No. My mother grabbed my arm. Her grip was painful. You will not do that. You will not send your brother to jail. We are a family. We solve this inside the house. He committed a crime, Mom. He made a mistake, she screamed. He is trying. He is your little brother. You are supposed to protect him. If you report this, you destroy him. You destroy us. I will never forgive you if you put him in handcuffs. I looked at her. I saw the tears in her eyes. But they weren't for me. They weren't for the fact that my life plans had been incinerated. They were for Liam. They were always for Liam. I realized then that they knew. Maybe they didn't know the extent. Maybe they didn't know the exact dollar amount. But they knew he was using my name. They saw the mail. They saw the cards come to the house. They saw him driving that truck and never asked how he afforded it. They chose willful ignorance because it was easier than confronting their golden child. Did you know? I asked my mother. She looked away. That was my answer. You saw the mail, I said. You saw the Chase letters. You saw the bills. I thought you knew, she cried. I thought you agreed to help him. He told us you were partners. You never asked me. I said. In 2 years, you never once asked me, hey, how is the partnership going? You never mentioned the mail. It's not my business, she said. It became my business when you pressured me to sign that first loan, I said. I pulled my arm away from her. I looked at Liam. He was watching me, calculating his next move. He thought he was safe. He thought the family card would work like it always did. He thought I would eat the debt to keep the peace. Here is what is going to happen, I said. I am not going to the police today. Liam exhaled. His shoulders dropped. He smiled a little. Okay. Thanks, bro. I knew you'd be reasonable. We can work out a... Shut up, I said. I am not going to the police because I don't want to deal with the court dates. But I am going to the creditors. I am going to file disputes for identity theft on every single account. I am going to tell them I did not sign those applications. I will provide handwriting samples. I will provide geolocation data showing I was not where the applications were signed. I will clear my name. That's the same thing. Liam said. If you claim fraud, their fraud departments will come after me. That is your problem, I said. You have 24 hours to sell the truck. You have 24 hours to sell the watch. You have 24 hours to liquidate every single asset you bought with my name and pay down the balances. If you do that, maybe the banks will go easy on you when they investigate. But I am filing the fraud affidavits tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. You can't, my dad said. Son, please. This will ruin him. He won't be able to get a job. He'll have a record. He ruined me first, I said. He didn't care if I could get a house. He didn't care if I could provide for my future family. Why should I care about his record? Because you are better than him, my mother yelled. The words hung in the air. It was the truth, spoken out loud for the first time. They knew he was broken. They knew he was a mess. And they punished me for being the competent one. They expected me to absorb the damage because I could handle it. They viewed me as a resource, not a person. I am better than him, I said. And I am going to stay better than him by cutting this cancer out of my life. I walked out. They followed me to the driveway screaming. My mother was sobbing, begging me to reconsider. Liam was shouting threats now, saying I was dead to him, saying I was a traitor. My father just stood in the doorway, looking defeated. I drove home. I did not feel better. I felt hollow. I told Sarah everything. She cried. She was angry. But she stood by me. We spent the next night drafting the letters to the credit bureaus. We spent the weekend gathering documents. The next morning, at 9 a.m., I filed the disputes. I marked the accounts as fraudulent. I froze my credit at all 3 bureaus. I signed up for an identity theft protection service. The fallout was immediate and nuclear. My phone blew up. Texts from my mother calling me heartless. Voicemails from my father asking me to just pay a little bit. Threats from Liam saying he would sue me for defamation. I blocked them. I blocked them all. 2 weeks later, the repo man finally caught up with the truck. It was parked at my parents' house. The neighbors saw it get towed. My mother sent me an email, since she couldn't text, blaming me for the embarrassment. She said I had humiliated the family. She said I had chosen money over blood. I didn't reply. The investigation by the credit card companies took months. It was a grueling process. I had to prove I didn't make the charges. I had to prove the signatures didn't match. It was stressful. There were days I wanted to give up and just pay the debt to make it stop. But Sarah kept me focused. She reminded me that paying it would be admitting it was mine. Eventually, the evidence was undeniable. The IP addresses used to apply for the cards traced back to my parents' router and Liam's cell phone. The geolocation data on the physical card swipes was in cities I hadn't visited. The signatures were laughable forgeries. One by one, the accounts were removed from my report. The debt was transferred back to the applicant or written off as fraud. My score started to creep back up. It took a year to get back to the 700s. It took another 6 months to get back to where I was. I heard through a cousin that Liam is in bad shape. The banks did go after him. Not with handcuffs, but with lawyers. They sued him for the balances. They garnished his wages. He apparently got a job at a warehouse because his business collapsed without my credit to fund it. He is drowning in legal fees and debt. My parents are using their retirement savings to pay for his defense and his rent. They are bleeding themselves dry to keep him afloat. They still tell relatives that I am the villain. They tell people I abandoned my brother in his time of need. They tell people I got greedy and tried to sabotage his company. I don't care. Sarah and I bought a house last month. It is smaller than the one we originally wanted. The interest rate is a little higher because my score is still recovering. But it is ours. The only names on the deed are mine and hers. I was cleaning out some boxes in the new garage yesterday and I found an old photo album. There was a picture of me and Liam when we were kids. We were building a sandcastle. I was carefully packing the wet sand, building the walls. He was standing on top of the tower I built, laughing, ready to jump off. I threw the album in the trash. I learned a lesson that cost me 2 years of stress and my relationship with my family, but it was a valuable lesson. You cannot save people who are determined to drown, especially if they are trying to use you as a life raft. And sometimes, the most dangerous people in the world are the ones who share your last name. I still check my credit report every single Friday. It is a ritual now. I log in, I look at the number, and I breathe. It is just a number, but it is my number. It belongs to me. And nobody is ever going to touch it again. The silence from my family is not peaceful. It is a void where people used to be. But I have realized that the peace I have in my home, the safety I feel when I look at my bank account, and the trust one have with Sarah is worth the silence. They chose their side. They chose the lie. I chose the truth. And the truth is, I didn't destroy my brother's life. I just stopped letting him destroy mine. Sometimes I wonder if he ever thinks about it. If he sits in that warehouse during his break and regrets what he did. But then I remember the watch. I remember the truck. I remember the look on his face when I confronted him. He didn't regret the theft. He only regretted getting caught. He is a predator who thinks he is a victim. And my parents are the ecosystem that allows him to exist. I am done being part of that ecosystem. I am my own man now. And the first rule of my new life is simple: I do not co-sign. Not for anyone. Not ever again. The grass in my new backyard needs cutting. I was going to hire a landscaper, but I decided to buy a mower and do it myself. I don't want anyone else on my property. I want to know that every inch of this ground is maintained by me. It is slower work. It is harder work. But when I look back at the lines in the grass, they are straight. They are honest. And they are mine. That is enough. We have been in the house for 3 months now. The seasons are changing. The leaves are turning orange and red. I love this time of year. It reminds me of the good parts of childhood, before money and ego destroyed everything. Sarah asked me yesterday if I would ever talk to them again. She asked if they showed up at the door, apologized, and paid back every cent my parents spent on Liam's defense. Would I let them in? I thought about it for a long time. I thought about my mother's cooking. I thought about my father teaching me to throw a baseball. I thought about the jokes Liam and I used to share. Then I thought about the mortgage broker's office. I thought about the feeling of betrayal that felt like a physical blow. I thought about the fact that they were willing to sacrifice my stability for Liam's vanity. No, I told her. I wouldn't. Because an apology doesn't fix a character flaw. Paying back money doesn't restore trust. They showed me who they are. They showed me that I am disposable to them. You don't let people like that back in. You lock the door. You set the alarm. And you live your life. I am happy. It is a quiet happiness, hard won and carefully guarded. But it is real. And unlike Liam's life, unlike the facade my parents maintain, it is paid for in full. There are no debts outstanding. My phone rang this morning. A number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to it later. It was my aunt. She was crying. She said my dad had a minor heart attack. She said stress was a factor. She said I should come to the hospital. I sat with that message for an hour. I felt the pull. The biological imperative to run to your sick parent. The guilt was a heavy stone in my stomach. But then I remembered the stress I felt for 2 years. I remembered the panic attacks at 3 a.m. wondering if I would be sued. I remembered the shame. My dad's stress was caused by the consequences of his own enabling. It was caused by the financial drain of supporting a criminal son. It was not my burden to carry. I deleted the voicemail. I did not go to the hospital. I sent flowers with a card that said, "Wishing you a speedy recovery." I signed it with my name and Sarah's name. No love. Just names. It was cold. I know it was cold. But warmth is what got me burned in the first place. I am protecting my fire now. I am keeping it for the people who help build it, not the ones who try to douse it. I went out to the garden and started weeding. I pulled the invasive vines that were trying to choke out the tomatoes Sarah planted. You have to get them by the root. If you leave even a little bit of the root, they come back. They take over. They kill everything good you tried to grow. I pulled them all out. I threw them in the compost bin. I washed my hands. The garden looks good. It is healthy. It is thriving. Just like me. Life moves on. The credit score updates again. 740. Getting closer to perfect. It's a game now, watching it climb. Every point is a victory. Every point is a brick in the wall I am building between my past and my future. I ran into an old friend from high school at the hardware store. Mark. He knows Liam. He asked how Liam was doing. He said he saw him working at the distribution center. Said he looked rough. Said he looked older. I haven't spoken to him in years, I said. Mark looked surprised. Really? You guys were so close. People change, I said. Yeah, Mark said. I guess they do. He owes me $50, actually. From poker night 3 years ago. I laughed. Good luck with that, Mark. Yeah, I wrote it off, Mark said. Smart man, I said. Write it off. Cut your losses. Don't throw good money after bad. We shook hands and parted ways. I bought a new deadbolt for the back door. The old one was sticky. I wanted something smooth. Something secure. I spent the afternoon installing it. I chiseled out the wood frame. I aligned the strike plate. I tightened the screws. When I finished, I closed the door and turned the lock. Click. A solid, heavy sound of steel sliding into place. It was the most satisfying sound in the world. I made dinner for Sarah. Grilled salmon and asparagus. We sat on the patio and watched the sunset. The sky was purple and gold. You seem peaceful, she said. I am, I said. Did you think about the hospital? She asked. A little, I admitted. But not enough to go. She nodded. She understands. She comes from a family that talks about everything, that supports each other. But she has seen the darker side of family loyalty through me. She knows that sometimes, loyalty is just a fancy word for submission. We talked about our vacation plans. We are going to the mountains next month. Paying cash. No credit. Just debit cards and cash. It feels safer that way. I realized that I have become harder. I am less trusting. I am more cynical. I check receipts. I read the fine print on everything. I assume people are trying to screw me until they prove otherwise. Some might say that is a sad way to live. They might say I have lost my innocence. But innocence is expensive. Innocence costs you $80,000 and your credit score. Skepticism is free. And skepticism keeps you safe. I prefer safe. I went to bed early. I slept through the night. I didn't dream about drowning. I didn't dream about numbers. I just slept. The next morning, the sun came up. The world kept turning. The mailman delivered the mail. Just bills and flyers. Nothing from a collection agency. Nothing from a lawyer. It was a beautiful day. I opened the envelope from the water company. I wrote a check. I put it in the mailbox. I put the flag up. Simple. Orderly. My life. I am not the brother who made it big. I am not the entrepreneur. I am not the golden child. I am the one who pays his bills. And in the end, that is the only title that matters. 6 months later. The letter arrived in a plain white envelope. No return address. The handwriting was familiar. My mother's cursive. I held it over the shredder. I hesitated. Curiosity is a dangerous reflex. I opened it. It was a single page. Your father is recovering. He asks about you. Liam is trying to get into a trade school for welding. He wants to start over. We are refinancing the house to help him with tuition and his legal debts. We miss you. Please come for Christmas. We can put this behind us. Refinancing the house. They were risking their home. The home they had lived in for 30 years. The home that was supposed to be their nest egg. They were leveraging it to bail Liam out again. He had drained my credit. Now he was draining their equity. He is a black hole. He will consume everything until there is nothing left but gravity and darkness. And they are walking willingly into the event horizon. I felt a pang of pity. Not for Liam, but for my parents. They were going to lose that house. I knew it as surely as I knew the sun would set. Liam would fail at trade school, or he would get in trouble again, or he would convince them to invest the remaining equity in a new scheme. And they would say yes. Because they cannot say no. They are addicted to saving him, and he is addicted to needing saving. I looked at the invitation. Come for Christmas. If I went, I would be the villain again. I would be the one with money. They would look at my success and contrast it with Liam's struggle. They would ask for a small loan. They would ask me to help with the mortgage payments. And when I said no, the cycle would restart. The screaming. The guilt. I cannot save them. I can only save myself. I put the letter in the shredder. I watched the steel teeth chew up the handwriting. We miss you. Shredded. Start over. Shredded. Refinancing. Shredded. It fell into the bin as confetti. I went to the kitchen. Sarah was baking cookies. The house smelled like vanilla and sugar. What was that? She asked. Junk mail, I said. Just an offer for a credit card I don't need. Into the trash it goes, she said, smiling. Exactly, I said. Into the trash. I grabbed a cookie. It was warm. It tasted sweet. I am free. And I intend to stay that way. I worked 2 jobs to support my family. Then I discovered my wife was secretly saving money to leave me. Posted by u/blind-sighted provider. I am writing this because I literally have nobody else to talk to. If I tell my friends, they will tell their wives, and the circle will close before I am ready to make my move. If I tell my parents, my mother will have a heart attack. So you get to hear it. The internet gets to hear how my life disintegrated on a Tuesday afternoon, because I decided to clean the glove compartment of our Honda Odyssey. I have $12 in my checking account right now. I get paid on Friday. That check is already spent. It goes to the mortgage, the electric bill, the car insurance, and the credit card minimum payment. I have been operating at a deficit for 3 years. I work as a logistics coordinator for a shipping company from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. From 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., and all day on Saturdays, I drive for a rideshare app or pick up freelance consulting gigs for small businesses trying to optimize their supply chains. I sleep 6 hours a night. I eat processed garbage because it is cheap and fast. My boots have holes in the soles that I patched with duct tape and colored over with a black Sharpie so my boss wouldn't notice. I do this for Sarah. I do this for my 2 daughters, Emily, 8, and Chloe, 5. I do this because I was raised to believe that a man provides, no matter the cost to his own sanity or health. On Tuesday, I took the morning off. It was the first time I had taken unpaid time off in 2 years, but the car needed an oil change and the brakes were squeaking so loud it was embarrassing to drop the kids off at school. I didn't want to pay a mechanic to do something I could do myself, so I pulled the Odyssey into the driveway. While waiting for the oil to drain, I decided to organize the glove box. Sarah is messy. She shoves receipts, straw wrappers, and napkins in there. I pulled out a handful of papers to throw away. A bank statement fell out. It wasn't for our joint account. It wasn't for my small personal account I use for gas. It was an account with a bank I didn't recognize, under Sarah's maiden name. I stared at it. I thought maybe it was an old account she forgot to close, something from before we got married 10 years ago. I opened it. The statement date was from last week. The balance was $42,500. I stopped breathing. I literally forgot how to inhale. I sat there on the passenger seat of my beat-up minivan, my hands covered in grease, staring at a number that could solve every single problem in my life. That is credit card debt. That is the roof repair we have been putting off. That is a vacation we haven't taken in 5 years. That is me quitting the second job and actually seeing my children awake during the week. I looked at the transaction history. Cash deposits. Regular, systematic cash deposits. $200 here. $300 there. Occasional transfers from Venmo. I traced the dates. Every time she told me groceries were more expensive because of inflation, a deposit appeared. Every time she told me the kids needed new shoes and asked for extra cash, a deposit appeared. I felt like I had been punched in the throat. I walked into the house, the statement in my hand, and I almost screamed her name. But I didn't. I stopped in the kitchen. The house was quiet. Sarah was at her part-time job at the library. The kids were at school. I put the statement back in the envelope. I went back out to the car. I shoved it deep into the back of the owner's manual case where I found it. I finished the oil change. I changed the brake pads. I washed the grease off my hands. And then I went to my second job, and I drove strangers around the city for 5 hours while my brain screamed. I need to explain the dynamic of our marriage so you understand why this isn't just about money. It is about reality. For the last 3 years, the narrative in our house has been that we are drowning. Sarah constantly talks about how tight money is. She cries about it. She loses sleep over it. We sit at the kitchen table with a calculator, and she shows me the grocery receipts, pointing out how the price of eggs has tripled, how milk is a luxury item. She manages the household budget because I am always working. I hand over my paycheck, and she allocates it. I trust her. I trusted her. Last month, I had a tooth infection. I needed a root canal. It cost $1,200 with our terrible insurance. Sarah told me we didn't have it. She said we were overdrawn. She cried and said she felt like a failure because she couldn't help me. I sat on the bathroom floor in agony for 3 days, taking expired ibuprofen, until the infection subsided enough for me to just get the tooth pulled for $100 at a clinic. I lost a tooth because we didn't have the money. She has $42,000 sitting in an account. I came home that night after the discovery. Sarah was on the couch watching TV. She looked up and smiled. She looked tired. "Hey honey," she said. "There's leftover pasta in the fridge. I'm sorry, it's just plain sauce. I didn't have enough for meat." I looked at her. I looked at the woman I have shared a bed with for a decade. The woman who held my hand while I cried when my dad died. The woman who I thought was in the trenches with me, fighting this war against poverty. And I realized I was looking at a stranger. "Thanks," I said. My voice sounded flat, robotic. "I'm not hungry." I went to the shower and turned it on cold. I stood there and forced myself to think. Why? Why would she do this? If she was saving for a surprise, a house down payment, a new car, she would have told me when I was pulling my own tooth out of my head. You don't watch your husband suffer if the money is there. You don't let him work 80 hours a week until his eyes are bloodshot and his hands shake if you have a safety net. Unless the safety net isn't for us. It's for her. I slept in the guest room that night. I told her I had a headache and didn't want to keep her up. The next morning, I started digging. I needed to know the extent of it before I confronted her. I needed to know if this was just money, or if it was something worse. I took a sick day from the logistics job. I waited for her to leave. I went into our home office. Sarah is old school. She likes paper trails, but she thinks she's clever enough to hide them. I tore the office apart. I checked the backs of picture frames. I checked inside the pockets of her winter coats in the closet. I found a notebook in her sewing kit. It was buried under spools of thread and fabric scraps. It wasn't a diary. It was a ledger. It was titled Freedom Fund. The first entry was dated 3 years ago, right around the time I started the second job. The goal written at the top of the page was $50,000. Underneath that, a list of expenses. First and last month rent, $3,000. Furniture, $5,000. Lawyer retainer, $7,500. Living expenses, 6 months $20,000. She wasn't saving for a vacation. She was saving to divorce me. I sat on the floor of our bedroom, surrounded by the debris of my search, and I read every single line. It was meticulous. She had documented every dollar she skimmed. Told Mark the car repair was $600. Actual cost $250. Pocketed $350. Sold the old stroller on Marketplace. Told Mark I donated it. Plus $100. Grocery cashback. Plus $40. Mark's bonus. Convinced him to put it in the emergency fund, my account. Plus $1,000. I felt sick. Physically sick. The betrayal was so precise. It wasn't a crime of passion. It was a cold, calculated dismantling of my life. She was monetizing my exhaustion. Every hour I worked overtime was an hour she could siphon money away to fund her escape. I put everything back exactly where I found it. I had to be smart. If I confronted her now, she would bolt. She has the money. She could take the kids and disappear, or hire a shark of a lawyer while I'm stuck with a public defender because on paper, I'm broke. I need a plan. I need to protect myself and my children. I am currently sitting in my car in a parking lot, typing this out on my phone. I have to go pick up the kids from school in an hour and pretend that I don't know my wife has been bleeding me dry for 3 years. I don't know what to do. I don't know who she is. Update 1, the audit. It has been 3 days since my original post. Thank you to everyone who commented. Reading your perspectives helped me stabilize my emotions. I realized that crying and screaming would get me nowhere. This is a business transaction to her now, so I need to treat it like one. I have not confronted her yet. I am playing the role of the tired, oblivious husband. It is the hardest acting performance of my life. Every time she asks me for money, I want to vomit. Yesterday, she asked for $200 for a school field trip fee for Emily. I called the school. The fee is $20. She was going to pocket $180. I told her I didn't have the cash on me and I'd write a check directly to the school. The look of panic in her eyes was fleeting, but I saw it. She quickly backtracked, saying she would just put it on the credit card and I could pay it off later. I agreed. I watched her walk away, and I felt a cold hatred I didn't know I was capable of. I have spent the last 3 days conducting a forensic audit of my life. Since I handle the logistics at my job, I know how to track inventory and flow. I applied that to my marriage. I went through our legitimate joint bank account statements for the last 3 years. I compared them to the ledger entries I photographed from her Freedom Fund notebook. The correlation is terrifying. Here is what I found. The grocery skim. She goes grocery shopping twice a week. On average, she withdraws $50 cash back at the register every single time. That's $100 a week. $5,200 a year. Over 3 years, that's $15,600. Just in cash back at the grocery store. I never noticed because it's bundled into the Walmart or Kroger transaction line on the statement. The inflation lie. I tracked the utility bills. She handles the payments. She tells me the electric bill was $300 in the winter. I logged into the utility provider's portal. I had to reset the password because she changed it. The actual bill was $180. She was transferring the difference to her secret account. She did this with water, gas, and internet. The kids, this hurts the most. She has been using our children as pawns in her accumulation scheme. She buys their clothes at thrift stores, which is fine, we are broke, but tells me she bought them new and needs reimbursement. She claims they need money for tutors, for equipment, for fees that don't exist. She is leveraging my desire to give my daughters a good life to steal from me. I calculated the total. It matches her bank statement almost exactly. She hasn't earned this money. She hasn't saved it from her own income. She has embezzled it from our family. I spoke to a lawyer yesterday. I used the last of my personal cash to pay for a consultation hour. I didn't tell him everything, just the hypotheticals. He told me that in our state, assets acquired during the marriage are community property, even if they are in a separate account. However, proving the source of the funds is key. He said if I can prove financial infidelity, it looks very bad for her in a custody battle. But he also warned me that if she spends it, it's gone. Courts can order her to pay it back, but if the money is hidden or spent, you can't get blood from a stone. He advised me to secure my own funds immediately and to stop the bleeding. So, I made a move. This morning, I went to HR at my primary job. I changed my direct deposit. Instead of the full check going into our joint account, I set it up so that 70% goes into a new account I opened at a completely different bank. Only enough to cover the actual bills, which I now know the real cost of, goes to the joint account. I did the same with my rideshare earnings. 100% of that now goes to my private account. I came home tonight and waited. I knew the notification would hit her phone or she would check the balance eventually. It happened at dinner. We were eating tacos. The kids were telling us about their day. Sarah looked at her phone. Her face went pale. She tapped the screen a few times, refreshed the app. She looked at me. "Mark," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Did you get paid today?" "Yeah," I said, biting into a taco. "Why?" "The deposit. It's really small. It's less than half of usual." I chewed slowly. "Oh yeah. There was a glitch with payroll. They're switching systems. The rest should clear in a week or two." "Why? Are we short on something?" She stared at me. She couldn't say, "I need that money to skim my percentage." She couldn't say, "That ruins my deposit schedule." "Well, no," she stammered. "But the mortgage is due on the 1st. And I needed to get groceries." "There's enough in there for the mortgage and groceries," I said calmly. I checked the math. "We'll just have to be really tight this week. No extras. No cashback." I emphasized the words cashback. She froze. Her eyes locked onto mine. For a second, the mask slipped. I saw the calculation happening behind her eyes. She was wondering if I knew. But she dismissed it. In her mind, I am the dumb ox who works and sleeps and nods his head. She thinks she is the grandmaster of this chess game. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll make it work." Later that night, while she was in the shower, I checked the hiding spot in her sewing kit. The notebook was gone. She knows something is up. She moved the ledger. I need to accelerate my timeline. I have evidence of the bank account. I took photos of the statement. I have the photos of the ledger pages I took the first day. But now the physical evidence is moving. I am scared she is going to liquidate the account and stash the cash somewhere I can't track. Or worse, she's going to trigger her exit plan early. I looked at my daughters tonight while I was reading them a bedtime story. Chloe asked me why I looked sad. I told her I was just tired. She kissed my cheek and said, "Don't worry, Daddy. Mommy says soon we're going to go on a big adventure." My blood ran cold. "Oh?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "What kind of adventure?" "A secret one," she whispered. "Just us girls." I walked out of that room and I had to lean against the wall to keep from collapsing. She is planning to take them. She is planning to run. I am not going to let that happen. Update 2, the setup. The atmosphere in the house is suffocating. It has been a week since I changed the direct deposits. Sarah is on edge. She snaps at the kids. She paces around the kitchen. She is constantly on her phone, but she angles the screen away from me whenever I walk into the room. I have been working late every night. In reality, I am meeting with a new lawyer I retained using a credit card I opened in my name only. I realize the debt is worth it to save my life. This lawyer, let's call him Mr. Sharp, is a bulldog. I showed him the photos of the ledger and the bank statement. I told him about the adventure comment from my daughter. Mr. Sharp told me we need to file for divorce and an emergency custody order immediately to prevent her from leaving the state with the children. He called it a flight risk. But he said we need to catch her in a lie to solidify the financial abuse claim. We devised a plan. A trap. I came home on Friday with a bonus. I told Sarah that my consulting gig paid out early and gave me a $2,000 cash bonus. I put the stack of bills, which was actually a cash advance from my credit card, on the kitchen counter. "I know things are tight with the payroll glitch," I said. "This should cover everything. Put it in the bank tomorrow." I watched her eyes light up. It was like watching an addict see a fix. "Oh, Mark. That's amazing. This is such a relief." She hugged me. It felt like being hugged by a mannequin. Yeah, I said. Just make sure it goes into the joint account to cover the bills. Of course, she said. The next day, Saturday, she went to run errands. I stayed home with the kids. As soon as she left, I logged into our joint bank account online. I refreshed the page every hour. No deposit. She came home 3 hours later. Did you make the deposit? I asked. Yes, she said. The line was huge. Weird, I said. I don't see it on the app. Oh, you know how they are, she said quickly, turning her back to unpack groceries. If you deposit cash on a Saturday, it doesn't show up until Monday business hours. That is a lie. We bank with a major national bank. Cash deposits at the ATM or teller show up instantly or as pending. They don't just not exist. I waited until Monday. Still nothing in the joint account. But I bet if I could see her secret account, there would be a fresh $2,000 entry. I had her stealing a specific trackable sum of money after being explicitly told where it needed to go. But then, things got weird. Monday night, Sarah sat me down. She looked solemn. She had a folder on the table. Mark, she said, we need to talk. I sat down. Okay. I can't do this anymore, she said. Tears started welling up in her eyes. I've been trying so hard to manage our finances, to keep us afloat, but you're reckless. I'm reckless. I asked, genuinely confused by her angle. That bonus, she said. I went to deposit it, and I found a receipt in your jeans pocket. From a casino. She pulled out a piece of paper. It was a crumpled receipt from a casino about an hour away. I know you have a gambling problem, Mark, she sobbed. I've suspected it for years. That's why we never have money. That's why you work 2 jobs and we're still broke. You're gambling it away. I stared at the receipt. I have never been to a casino in my life. I looked closer. The date was from last Friday. The timestamp was 8 p.m. At 8 p.m. on Friday, I was driving a passenger to the airport. I have the ride log to prove it. She forged it. She went to a casino, or had someone go, got a receipt, and was now framing me for our financial ruin. I didn't deposit the money, she continued, wiping her eyes. Because I knew you'd just spend it. I'm keeping it safe. Mark, I think you need help. I think you need to move out for a while so you can work on yourself. For the girls. I sat there in silence. The audacity was breathtaking. She wasn't just leaving. She was executing a character assassination. She was setting the narrative for the divorce. Poor Sarah, the long-suffering wife of a gambling addict. That explains the lack of money. That explains the debt. It gives her full custody. It gives her the house. She reached out to touch my hand. I've spoken to a lawyer, she said softly. He thinks a separation is best. I pulled my hand away. You printed that receipt, I said. What? I was working at 8 p.m. on Friday. I have the Uber logs. I have the GPS data. I have a passenger who tipped me $20 at 8:05 p.m. Her face dropped. And I continued, my voice steady, I know about the Freedom Fund. I know about the $42,000. I know about the cashback. I know about the fake utility bills. The room went dead silent. The air pressure seemed to drop. Sarah's face transformed. The sad, worried wife vanished. Her eyes went hard. Her jaw set. She looked at me with pure, unadulterated contempt. You went through my things, she hissed. You stole from our family, I countered. You made me pull my own tooth out. She laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. You're pathetic, Mark. You're a workhorse. That's all you are. You think I wanted to live like this? Penny pinching? Clipping coupons? I deserve a life. I deserve security. You have security. I shouted, finally losing my cool. You have 40 grand in the bank while I wear shoes with holes in them. That is my money, she screamed back. I earned it. I managed this house. I raised those kids while you were gone. That is my salary for putting up with a boring dead-end life with a loser. You're not taking the kids, I said. She stood up. Watch me. You have no money. You have no time. You work 18 hours a day. What judge is going to give you custody? You can't even pick them up from school. I have the records, Mark. I have the journals of how absent you are. I'm taking them, and I'm leaving, and you're going to pay me alimony until you die." She grabbed her keys and walked out. I heard the garage door open and her car peel out. I stood in the kitchen, shaking. The bonus money was gone with her. I called Mr. Sharp immediately. It was 9 p.m. He answered. "She played her hand," I told him. "She tried to frame me for gambling, realized I knew everything, and she bolted." "Where are the children?" he asked. "They're asleep upstairs." "Good," he said. "Change the locks. Right now. Do not let her back in without a police escort or a court order. We are filing the emergency motion first thing in the morning. You have the evidence of the forgery." "I have the ride logs." "Perfect." The gambling accusation backfired. It proves malice. "Mark, this is going to get ugly. Is she coming back tonight?" "I don't know." I called a locksmith. He charged me triple for an emergency night call. While he drilled the locks, I packed the kids' bags just in case. I sat in the living room with a baseball bat by the door, not for a robber, but because I didn't know who she might come back with. She didn't come back that night. Update 3: The War. It has been a month since the confrontation. My life is a series of court dates and lawyer meetings. Sarah is staying with her sister. She filed for divorce 3 days after the fight. Her filing was full of lies, abuse, gambling, neglect. But we were ready. Mr. Sharp filed a countersuit detailing the embezzlement. We submitted the photos of the ledger, the bank statement, and the comparative analysis of the bills. We submitted the Uber logs proving I was working during her fabricated casino trip. The judge was interested. In family court, financial infidelity is a gray area. Usually, the court just divides the assets and moves on. But the malice of it, the systematic deprivation of the family unit while hoarding cash, rubbed the judge the wrong way. We had a temporary hearing last week regarding custody and the house. Sarah showed up looking like the victim. She wore old clothes, no makeup. Her lawyer painted me as a controlling monster who forced her to squirrel away pennies to escape. Then Mr. Sharp put her on the stand. "Mrs. Reynolds," he asked, "did you refuse to allocate funds for your husband's dental surgery last October, claiming insufficient household funds?" "We didn't have the money in the budget," she said, looking at the judge. "At that time, what was the balance of the account ending in 4590? Her lawyer objected. Overruled. I don't recall exactly. Documents show the balance was $38,400. Is that correct?" "That was my safety money," she snapped. "For when he inevitably crashed our finances." "And the $2,000 bonus Mr. Reynolds gave you last week. Where is that?" "I spent it on essentials." "In 2 days? Can you provide receipts?" She couldn't. The judge ordered a freeze on her secret account. He ordered a forensic accounting of all marital assets. And most importantly, he granted me temporary primary custody of the house and the children. Why? Because Sarah currently has no fixed address, living on her sister's couch, and no verifiable income other than the stolen funds, while I have the family home and a steady, albeit exhausted work history. The judge also noted that her attempt to frame me for gambling indicated a willingness to fabricate evidence, which cast doubt on her claims of my absenteeism. Sarah screamed in the courtroom. She actually screamed at the judge. "He's never home. He works all the time." "Perhaps," the judge said calmly, "if the household funds had not been diverted, he would not have needed to work 2 jobs, ma'am." That was the moment. The validation I needed. But it's not over. I am now a single dad to 2 confused little girls. I had to quit the rideshare job because I need to be home at night. This means my income has been slashed in half. I am scraping by. The irony is not lost on me. I finally have custody, I finally have the truth out, but I am financially more unstable than ever because the $42,000 is frozen until the final settlement. Sarah is playing dirty. She calls the girls and cries on the phone, telling them Daddy stole them from her. I have to monitor the calls. It breaks my heart. Emily asked me yesterday, Why does mommy say you're the bad guy? How do you explain to an 8-year-old that mommy loves money more than she loves daddy's health? You don't. You just say, mommy is upset right now, but we both love you. I found more things in the house now that she's gone. I found a box of designer clothes in the attic, tags still on. She was buying them and hiding them, probably planning to debut her new wardrobe once she dumped me. I found a credit card in my name that I didn't open. It's maxed out, $5,000. She must have intercepted the mail. That's identity theft. Mr. Sharp says we can add it to the pile, maybe use it as leverage to force her to sign a favorable settlement. I am tired. I am so tired. But for the first time in years, when I come home, the air is clear. I don't feel the weight of her secret judgment. I make dinner, spaghetti, cheap and easy. I help with homework. We watch movies. I am poor. My tooth still hurts sometimes where the gum didn't heal right. But I am free. Final update, the settlement. It's been 6 months. The divorce is final. Here is how it shook out. The forensic accounting was a bloodbath for her. It turned out the $42,000 was just the tip of the iceberg. She had another account with $15,000 in bonds she had inherited from a grandmother and never told me about, technically separate property, but she used marital funds to pay the taxes on them. Because of the credit card fraud, the identity theft card, her lawyer advised her to settle or risk me pressing criminal charges. I didn't want to send the mother of my children to jail, but I was willing to dangle it over her head to protect my future. The deal. The money, the Freedom Fund, was split. But not 50-50. Because she had dissipated marital assets, the money she spent while hiding it, and committed fraud, the judge awarded me 75% of the hidden account. I got roughly $31,000. She got $10,000. The house, I kept the house. I have to refinance to get her name off the mortgage within 2 years, but since the equity was built on my back while she skimmed, I got a favorable equity split. Custody, 60/40 split in my favor. I have them during the school week. She gets them 3 weekends a month and half the summer. The judge didn't like her stability or her adventure plans. She is living in a small apartment now. Alimony, 0. She requested it. The judge laughed, metaphorically. Since she proved she was capable of saving $15,000 a year while working part-time, the court imputed a higher income potential for her. She has to get a full-time job. The reality. I used the $31,000 to pay off the credit card debt she racked up in my name and the high-interest debt we had accumulated. I fixed the car. I fixed my teeth, got an implant finally. I quit the second job permanently. Last weekend was the first time in 4 years I didn't work on a Saturday. I woke up. The house was quiet. The girls were with Sarah. I made coffee. I sat on my back porch. The wood is rotting and needs to be painted, but I didn't care. I sat there for 3 hours and just watched the birds. I feel a phantom limb syndrome where my marriage used to be. I miss having a partner, or at least the illusion of one. I miss the family unit. I mourn the time I lost working myself to death for a lie. I saw Sarah at the drop-off on Sunday. She looks different. Harder. She drives a used sedan now. She didn't look me in the eye. She hugged the girls and handed me their bags. Chloe forgot her inhaler, she said. I have a spare, I said. She paused. She looked at the house. The gutters are full, she noted. I'll get to them, I said. I have time now. She flinched. That was the dagger. She knows she gave me my time back by forcing my hand. I am 34 years old. I have 2 kids, a mortgage, and a restarted heart. I don't know if I'll ever trust anyone again. When I go on a date eventually, who knows when, the first time she asks to split the bill or mentions money, I know I'm going to panic. That trauma is going to stick. But tonight, I'm going to order pizza. The good kind. With extra pepperoni. And I'm not going to check the bank account before I hit place order. Because I know exactly how much is in there. And it's all mine. Edit. A lot of people are asking if she ever apologized. No. To this day, she maintains that she did what she had to do because I was financially incompetent. She has rewritten history in her head to make herself the hero who was thwarted by a vindictive husband. She tells her friends I hid money. She tells her family I was abusive. I don't care. I have my girls. I have my weekends. And I have the truth. That's enough. End of post. Comments from the original thread. User 1. The "I have time now" line probably hurt her more than the divorce decree. Good for you, OP. User 2. The dental thing is what got me. I can't imagine watching my spouse in agony over $1,200 when I have $40,000 sitting there. That's sociopathic. User 3. Make sure you keep monitoring your credit report. If she opened one card, she might try again. Lock everything down. User 4. It sounds like she didn't just want to leave. She wanted to destroy you on the way out to justify her own guilt. If you were a failure, her leaving was noble. If you were a hard worker, she was just a thief. She needed you to be the villain. My wife said she needed space. 3 months later I found out she'd moved in with my best friend. Part 1. The Blind Side. I am writing this because I honestly don't have anyone else to talk to right now. My entire support system has imploded in the span of 48 hours. I'm sitting in a hotel room that smells like stale cleaning product and regret, trying to piece together how the last 10 years of my life turned out to be a lie. I need to get this out of my head before I explode. 3 months ago my wife, let's call her Sarah, sat me down on our beige sectional sofa, the one we spent 3 weekends picking out, and told me she was suffocating. She didn't cry. That was the first thing that should have tipped me off. Sarah cries at commercial breaks. She cries when she's angry. But she sat there with dry eyes and a posture so rigid she looked like she was waiting for a dental extraction. She told me she loved me, but she wasn't in love with me anymore. The classic line. She said she had lost her identity. She said she went from her parents' house to a college dorm to living with me, and she never had a moment to just be Sarah. She needed space. Not a divorce, she assured me. Just a separation. A physical distance to reset her emotional baseline. I was devastated. I begged. I pleaded. I asked if there was someone else. She looked me dead in the eye, insulted that I would even ask, and said, "This isn't about anyone else. This is about me fixing me so I can be better for us." I believed her. God, I was such a fool. I offered to move into the guest room. She said no, she needed to be alone in the house to process. I offered to go to a hotel. She said that was too expensive and she didn't want to drain our savings. Finally, we agreed I would stay at my parents' place a town over, and she would stay in the house for a month, then we'd switch. The night I packed my bag, my best friend, let's call him Mark, came over to help me load my car. Mark and I have been friends since freshman year of college. He was the best man at our wedding. He gave a speech about how Sarah and I were the definition of soulmates. He cried during the ceremony. While I was packing, Mark was in the kitchen with Sarah. I could hear low voices. I assumed he was lecturing her, defending me, telling her she was making a mistake. When we got to the car, Mark clamped a hand on my shoulder. He looked devastated for me. "She's just going through a phase, man," he told me, shaking his head. "Midlife crisis at 30. Just give her the space. Don't suffocate her. She'll realize what she's missing." I hugged him. I thanked him for being the only sane person in my life. I drove away, leaving my wife and my best friend in my driveway, thinking I was the one leaving the team behind. That was 90 days ago. Part 2, the limbo. The first month was torture. I followed the rules. No texting unless it was an emergency. No dropping by unannounced. I wanted to prove to her that I could respect her boundaries. I wanted to be the good guy. I spent my nights at my parents' house, sleeping in my childhood twin bed, staring at the ceiling. I replayed every conversation we'd had in the last year. I looked for cracks. We had a routine. We worked, we cooked dinner, we watched Netflix, we went to bed. Maybe it was boring. Maybe I had gotten complacent. I beat myself up for weeks. I started going to the gym, thinking if I got back into college shape, she'd see me differently. I started reading books on communication. I was building a better version of myself for a woman who was already gone. Mark checked on me constantly. He was a saint. He'd meet me for beers and let me vent for hours. He'd tell me, "I talked to Sarah briefly when I picked up my tools I lent you guys. She seems confused. But she's asking about you." He was feeding me hope. He was keeping me on the hook just enough so I wouldn't snap and file for divorce, but not enough that I'd go storming back to the house. Around the 6-week mark, things shifted. Sarah texted me that she needed to extend the separation. She said the house had too many memories, and she couldn't think clearly there. She wanted to rent a small apartment in the city, closer to her job. She suggested we rent out our house to cover the mortgage and her new rent. It seemed logical. Financial suicide, maybe, but logical if you bought into her narrative of finding herself. I agreed. We found tenants, a nice young couple, and Sarah signed a lease on an apartment downtown. I didn't see the apartment. She said she wanted it to be her sanctuary, a place that was purely hers, untouched by my influence. I need this to be mine, she said over the phone. Her voice was softer than it had been in weeks. Please respect that. So I did. I stayed at my parents'. I let her move out. Mark even offered to help her move, so I wouldn't have to see her and get emotional. I got you, bro, he said. I'll make sure she doesn't break anything. I bought him a bottle of scotch as a thank you. The irony is nauseating. Part 3. The red flags I ignored. Now that I'm sitting in the wreckage, the red flags are so bright they're blinding. I need to list them, if only to punish myself for being so blind. The phone. About 6 months ago, Sarah changed her passcode. She said her work required higher security. She started taking her phone into the bathroom when she showered. I joked about it. She got defensive. The work projects. Mark is a graphic designer. Sarah works in marketing. They started collaborating on a freelance project about 4 months ago. It meant late nights. It meant Mark coming over for dinner 3 times a week to brainstorm. I was cooking for them. I was pouring their wine while they sat at the dining table laughing at inside jokes about fonts and color palettes. The gym. Sarah started going to a new gym. Mark goes to that gym. She said it was a coincidence, that it was just the best one in the area. She'd come home glowing, sweaty, and happy. I was glad she was getting healthy. The distance, the intimacy stopped. Not just sex, but the touching, the hand-holding. She stopped sitting next to me on the couch. She created a physical force field around herself. When I tried to bridge it, she flinched. The worst part isn't the cheating. It's the gaslighting. It's the fact that they made me feel crazy for asking if something was going on. It's Mark looking me in the face, drinking my beer, and telling me I was paranoid. Part 4. The discovery. Here is how it all came crashing down. It wasn't a text message. It wasn't lipstick on a collar. It was a damn Bluetooth speaker. 2 days ago, I was driving past the downtown area where Sarah's sanctuary apartment is. I didn't know the exact unit number, but I knew the building because I'm the one who transferred the utility bills to her name. I'm an idiot, I know. I wasn't stalking her. I swear. I was actually going to the hardware store, which is 2 blocks over. But traffic was diverted due to construction, and I ended up sitting at a red light directly in front of her building. I looked up. It's a modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows and balconies. On the 3rd floor, I saw a guy standing on the balcony. He was leaning against the railing, shirtless, drinking coffee. It was Mark. My brain didn't process it at first. I thought, oh, Mark must be visiting her. Maybe he's dropping something off. Then Sarah walked out. She was wearing a t-shirt. My vintage band t-shirt that I thought I had lost in the move. She walked up behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist, and rested her chin on his shoulder. He turned around, kissed her on the forehead, and they stood there, looking down at the street. Looking down at me, though they couldn't see me through the glare of my windshield. They looked comfortable. They didn't look like 2 people having a scandalous affair. They looked like a couple who had been living together for years. They looked domestic. I pulled my car over into a loading zone. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't put the gear in park. I sat there for an hour. I watched them go back inside. I watched the lights go on. I needed proof. Hard proof. I couldn't just confront them with, I saw you on a balcony. They'd lie. They'd say Mark was just comforting her and she was emotional. They'd spin it. I remembered the Bluetooth speaker. When Sarah moved out, she took our high-end portable speaker. It's connected to my Spotify account. We never disconnected it. Usually, when she uses it, I just see Sarah's speaker pop up as an active device on my app. I opened Spotify on my phone. I saw the device was active. I clicked on it. It wasn't playing Sarah's Sad Girl Autumn playlist. It was playing a podcast. Mark's favorite political podcast. The one he listens to religiously every morning. I took a screenshot. Then I opened our shared Amazon account. We had separated our finances, but she was still logged into the Prime account because she wanted the free shipping. I went to the archived orders section, the place where you hide gifts or embarrassing purchases. There it was. 3 months ago, 2 weeks before she asked for space, an order for a king-size memory foam mattress, delivered to Mark's address. Then, a month ago, an order for his and hers towel set, delivered to her new apartment address. Then, last week, a recurring subscription for Mark's specific brand of protein powder, delivered to her apartment. She hadn't moved into a sanctuary. She had moved Mark in. Or rather, they had moved in together. Part 5. The confrontation that wasn't. I didn't storm up there. I didn't kick down the door. I drove home to my parents' house, walked into the backyard, and vomited into the bushes. My dad found me there. He's a quiet man, old school. He asked me what was wrong. I told him everything. I showed him the photo of the balcony I managed to snap with my zoom lens. It was blurry, but undeniable to anyone who knew them. I showed him the Amazon orders. My dad didn't say a word. He walked into the house, came back with a beer, handed it to me, and said, "Call a lawyer. Do not call her." I listened to him. Yesterday, I met with a divorce attorney. I laid it all out. The lawyer, a shark of a woman named Karen, the good kind of Karen, told me exactly what to do. Secure the assets. Document the infidelity. Even though we are in a no-fault state, it matters for the timeline and potential alimony arguments. Cut off all funds. I did it all. I canceled the credit cards she was an authorized user on. I transferred half of our joint savings, my legal right, into a separate account. I changed the passwords to everything she still had access to: Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, Prime. Then, I sent the text. I didn't want a big dramatic phone call. I didn't want to hear her voice. I sent a group text. To Sarah. And Mark. Me, I know. I saw you on the balcony. I saw the Amazon orders. I know you've been living together. The locksmith is coming to the house to change the locks in case you have keys. My lawyer will be in touch on Monday. Mark, you can keep the protein powder. I canceled the subscription. Sarah, you can keep Mark. You deserve each other. Then I blocked them both. Part 6. The explosion. Blocking them was the smartest thing I did, but it meant the explosion happened around me, not directly at me. My phone started blowing up from other people. Mutual friends. Mark's sister, who I've known for years. Sarah's mom. Apparently, they panicked. Mark showed up at my parents' house an hour after the text. My dad answered the door. I stayed upstairs, but I heard it. "Mr. Thompson, please, I need to talk to Jason. It's a misunderstanding. He's got it all wrong." "You're on my property," my dad said. His voice was terrifyingly calm. "If you are not off my property in 10 seconds, I am calling the police. And if you ever come near my son again, God help you." Mark left. Then came the emails. Since I blocked their numbers, Sarah emailed me 12 times in 1 hour. Email 1, "Jason, please answer. It's not what it looks like." Email 4, "We were going to tell you. We just didn't want to hurt you while you were fragile." Email 9, "You can't just cut me off financially. I have rent to pay." Email 12, "You're being childish. We fell in love. It happens. Don't punish us for finding happiness." That last one broke me. Don't punish us for finding happiness. As if my misery was just an unfortunate side effect of their glorious love story. As if they hadn't orchestrated a 3-month charade to test drive their relationship while keeping me as a safety net. I didn't reply. Part 7. The fallout, current state. So here I am. It's been 48 hours. The mutual friend group has fractured. Turns out, a few people knew. Or suspected. One friend, Jen, texted me saying, "I had a feeling when I saw them at a bar 2 months ago, but Mark told me you guys had an open arrangement. I'm so sorry I didn't ask you." He told people we had an open arrangement. He slandered my marriage to cover his tracks. Sarah's parents are calling me. Her mom is hysterical. Sarah apparently told them I threw her out and she had nowhere to go, so Mark took her in. I sent her mom the screenshot of the space text Sarah sent me 3 months ago, and the Amazon receipts for the his and hers towels. I didn't add any commentary. Her mom hasn't replied, which means she knows her daughter is a liar. I feel hollow. I feel like my history has been erased. Every memory I have of the last year is tainted. Every time Mark came over, every time he clapped me on the back, he was laughing at me. Every time Sarah said she was confused, she was actually just strategizing. I'm 32 years old and I have to start over. I have to divorce my wife and mourn my best friend at the same time. It feels like a death. 2 deaths. But there is one small petty thing keeping me going. I checked the joint bank account one last time before the lawyer locks it down completely. Sarah tried to charge $200 at a fancy steakhouse last night. Transaction declined. Welcome to the real world, Sarah. No safety net. No husband to pay the bills while you play house with his best friend. I'll update when the legal dust settles. For now, I'm going to try to sleep. Update 1, 2 weeks later. It has been a fortnight of absolute chaos. I want to thank everyone for the comments on the first post. The support kept me sane when I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Here is where things stand. The legal battle my lawyer, Karen, is a force of nature. She filed the petition for divorce on grounds of adultery. Even though my state is no fault for the divorce itself, the adultery impacts the division of assets and alimony. Since I have proof they were cohabitating and spending marital funds on their relationship, the Amazon orders, the dinners out while she was claiming to be finding herself, Karen says we have a strong case to deny her any spousal support. Sarah was served the papers at work. I wasn't there, obviously, but a co-worker of hers, who I've remained friendly with, told me she turned ghost white and had to leave for the day. The smear campaign Sarah and Mark have gone on the offensive. Since they can't deny they are together, they are trying to rewrite history. They are telling anyone who will listen that I was emotionally abusive and neglectful, and that Mark saved her from a toxic environment. It's infuriating. I was the guy who drove her to work when it rained so she wouldn't ruin her shoes. I was the guy who learned to cook gluten-free because she thought she might be sensitive to wheat. She wasn't. But the lie is spreading. I've lost about half our mutual friends. They didn't even ask for my side. They just saw the happy new couple photos on Instagram. Yes, they are already posting photos, and bought the narrative that true love conquered a dark marriage. However, the core group, the guys I've known since high school, the ones who aren't swayed by Mark's charisma, have circled the wagons around me. They kicked Mark out of the fantasy football league. It sounds petty, but that league has been running for 12 years. It hurt Mark more than the divorce hurt Sarah. The confrontation, I couldn't avoid it forever. We had a mandatory mediation session via Zoom yesterday to discuss the temporary separation of assets. Seeing them on the screen was surreal. They were sitting in her apartment. The one I'm technically paying for until the divorce is final because my name is on the credit profile she used to rent it, fraud arguably, but we're dealing with that. Sarah looked tired. Mark looked defiant. He had his arm draped over the back of her chair, like he was protecting her from me. The mediator asked about the bank accounts. Sarah spoke up. Jason cut me off without warning. I have no access to money. I can't buy groceries. My lawyer cut in. Ms. Miller is currently employed full-time, correct? And she is cohabitating with Mr. Davidson, who is also employed. Mr. Thompson is not required to subsidize your new household. Mark leaned into the camera. She's my partner now, Jason. You don't own her. But you do owe her half of what you built together. I finally spoke. I hadn't planned to. I looked right at the camera lens. Mark, you're wearing my hoodie. He froze. He looked down. He was wearing my dark blue university hoodie. The one I left at his place 6 months ago after a game night. You stole my wife, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. You stole my life. And you're too cheap to buy your own clothes. You're a scavenger, Mark. Mark turned red. Sarah put her hand on his arm to quiet him. We just want this over, Sarah whispered. It'll be over, I said, when you sign the papers admitting what you did. We ended the call. No agreement reached. We are going to court. The unexpected ally. This is the part that feels like a movie. 2 days ago, I got a DM on Instagram. It was from Mark's ex-girlfriend, Chloe. They broke up about 8 months ago. I never really knew why. Mark just said she was crazy. I'm sensing a pattern here. Chloe wrote, "Hey Jason. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. I think there's something you should know. When Mark and I were together, he used to talk about Sarah constantly. He used to compare me to her. Why can't you be more supportive like Sarah? Sarah understands my art." I found texts between them from a year ago. They weren't sexual, but they were emotional. He was feeding her unhappiness. He was planting seeds. He'd tell her you didn't appreciate her. I called him out on it, and that's why we broke up. He didn't dump me. I dumped him because he was in love with your wife. It wasn't a sudden crisis. It wasn't a mistake. Mark had been working on her for a year. He had been slowly poisoning my marriage from the inside, acting as the confidant, while dismantling my image in her mind. It makes me feel sick. But it also makes me feel vindicated. I wasn't a bad husband. I was just fighting a war I didn't know I was in. Moving forward, I moved out of my parents' house and into a short-term rental. I couldn't be in my childhood bedroom anymore. I needed my own space. I've started therapy. The therapist says I have betrayal trauma. No kidding. I'm focusing on work. I'm focusing on the legal steps. I'm trying not to drink too much. One day at a time. Update 2, the final nail. It's been 3 months since the first post. 6 months since she asked for space. The divorce is finalized. Here is the kicker. Here is the part that makes me believe in karma. The house we sold, the marital home. The market is good, so we made a decent profit. By law, we had to split it 50-50ths. It hurt to write her that check, knowing she'd use it to build a life with him. But I wanted to be free. The job. Remember how Sarah and Mark worked together on projects? Well, companies have policies. Sarah's company has a strict non-fraternization policy regarding vendors. Mark was a vendor. Someone, I honestly don't know who, maybe Jen, maybe Chloe, maybe just bad luck, tipped off HR that Sarah was steering contracts to a vendor she was cohabitating with. Conflict of interest. Sarah was fired 3 weeks ago. Mark's contract with the company was terminated. The paradise troubles with no job and a damaged reputation in her industry. Sarah is stressed. How do I know? Because the United Front is cracking. I ran into Mark at the grocery store last week. Small town/city hazards. He looked rough. He's gained weight. He wasn't wearing my hoodie this time. He saw me and actually stopped. He didn't look defiant anymore. He looked tired. "Jason," he nodded. "Mark." "Look," he said, shifting his weight. It's been hard. She's taking the firing really hard. She's a lot to handle right now." I almost laughed. He was trying to vent to me. He was trying to slip back into the dynamic where I listened to his problems. He was complaining about the woman he stole, to the man he stole her from. "That sounds frustrating," I said. "But she's your problem now. You wanted her. You got her. All of her. The anxiety, the unemployment, the need for constant validation. She's all yours, buddy." I walked away. I didn't look back. Closure. I'm not over it. I still have nightmares. I still trust no one. If a girl smiles at me at a bar, I wonder what her angle is. But I'm free. I realized something during this process. When Sarah asked for space, she did me a favor. She removed herself from my life so I could see clearly. I was carrying that relationship. I was the one making the effort, planning the dates, apologizing for fights I didn't start. Mark thinks he won a prize. He doesn't realize he won an anchor. I'm going to take a trip next month. Solo. Italy. I've always wanted to go, but Sarah didn't like long flights and preferred beaches. So I'm going to Rome. I'm going to eat pasta and look at ruins and realize that things can be broken and still be beautiful. Thank you, Reddit, for listening. Final edit. To anyone reading this who is hearing "I need space from a spouse," trust your gut. Check the phone bill. And never, ever trust the best friend who is a little too supportive of her journey. I'm out. Comment section highlights. Reconstructed. User 1293, he complained to you about her? The audacity of this man is in the stratosphere. She's a lot to handle. Yeah, Mark, that's why relationships take work. Something you wouldn't know since you just steal them ready-made. Jason_throwaway, OP exactly. He likes the chase. He doesn't like the maintenance. He's realizing that the fantasy of Sarah is different from the reality of an unemployed, stressed partner. Sarah's_x_BFF, I'm Jen. Just wanted to say publicly that I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. Mark is a snake. We all see it now. Enjoy Italy, Jason. Divorcedad, the space talk is almost always code for I want to try out this other person but keep you on the bench in case it doesn't work. Good on you for burning the bench. Throwaway_Chloe, glad I could help, Jason. You deserve better. User 882, the hoodie comment was iconic. That was the moment you took your power back. Analysis, the anatomy of the betrayal. This section is a deeper dive into my own psyche, written for myself as part of my therapy homework, included here for context. My therapist asked me to write down why I missed the signs. It's easy to say I was blind, but why? I think it's because I viewed Mark and Sarah as the two pillars of my life. In my head, geometry worked like this: me and Sarah, me and Mark. It never occurred to me to worry about the line connecting Sarah and Mark. They were family. You don't suspect incest, and that's what this felt like. Emotional incest. When Mark came over for dinner, I wasn't the third wheel. I was the host. I felt proud that my best friend and my wife got along. I thought, look at this great life I've built. I remember one night specifically. It was about 4 months ago. We were watching a movie. I fell asleep on the recliner. I woke up around 1 a.m. They were still on the couch. The TV was off. They were just talking. In the dark. When I sat up, they jumped. Just solving the world's problems, Mark had said, laughing a little too loud. Go to bed, old man, Sarah had teased me. I went to bed. I left them there. That was the moment. Looking back, that was probably the night they crossed the line from friends to whatever they are now. I also ignored Sarah's unhappiness. That's on me. She was unhappy. But instead of talking to me, she talked to him. And instead of encouraging her to talk to me, he validated her misery. He amplified it. He weaponized empathy. It's a terrifying thing to realize that the person you trusted most in the world was actively dismantling your life while drinking your scotch. But I'm surviving. The anger is turning into indifference. Slowly. I used to check her Instagram from a burner account every day. I haven't checked it in a week. Progress. Addendum, the logistics of leaving. For those asking about the practicalities, here is what 10,000 words of emotional dumping often leaves out. The boring, gritty reality of uncoupling. The stuff we had to split our possessions. We hired a third-party service to do it because we couldn't be in the same room. I got the TV, the leather chair, and the kitchen gadgets. I cook, she reheats. She got the bed, ironic, considering she bought a new one for Mark, the decor, and the nice dining table. I found a box of photos she left behind. Wedding photos. Honeymoon photos. I didn't burn them. That feels too dramatic. I put them in a storage unit. Maybe one day I'll want to look at them and remember the good parts. Or maybe my kids, if I ever have them with someone else, will want to know about my first life. The friends, this was the hardest part. Custody of friends is messier than custody of children. Team Jason, my college roommates, my gym buddies, Mark's ex, Chloe, and surprisingly Sarah's brother, he thinks what she did is disgraceful. Team Sarah/Mark, her work friends, the ones she hasn't been fired from yet, Mark's artistic crowd, and the people who just love drama and want front row seats to their train wreck. The Switzerland crowd, the people who try to invite us both to parties. I cut these people off. Neutrality in the face of betrayal is just cowardice. The money divorce is expensive. I spent about $15,000 on legal fees. It was worth every penny to ensure I didn't pay alimony. The forensic accountant we hired found that Mark had borrowed $2,000 from Sarah while we were still married. We deducted that from her share of the house sale. Petty? Yes. Satisfying? Incredibly. Final thoughts. If you are reading this and you feel a pit in your stomach because your partner is texting a friend a little too much, or they are suddenly needing space to find themselves, don't ignore it. Don't be the cool spouse who doesn't get jealous. Jealousy is an alarm system. It's evolution telling you that your territory is being invaded. I ignored the alarm. I let the fox into the henhouse because the fox was my best friend. But I'm still standing. I'm Jason. I'm 3.